Hillsborough, New Jersey, celebrating 250 years of a rich history.
Hi, I'm Mayor Sean Lapani, and I'm proud to showcase Hillsborough, one of the best places to live in America.
From the preserved farms that help feed the world, to the Vanderveer House, to the John R. Stott's house, restored and currently utilized for business, to the magnificent and world-famous Duke Farms,
where you can walk or ride a bike through their historic grounds, to the iconic Neshannock Reformed Church, and just down the road is our fabulous Neshannock Mill, located right on the picturesque Raritan River.
You're invited to visit Hillsborough, a great place to live, work, play, and do business anytime. And experience over 250 years of proud history in Hillsborough, New Jersey. Hillsborough, New Jersey, celebrating 250 years of a rich history.
Hi, I'm Mayor Sean Lapani, and I'm proud to showcase Hillsborough, one of the best places to live in America.
From the preserved farms that help feed the world, to the Vanderveer House, to the John R. Stott's house, restored and currently utilized for business, to the magnificent and world-famous Duke Farms,
where you can walk or ride a bike through their historic grounds, to the iconic Neshannock Reformed Church, and just down the road is our fabulous Neshannock Mill, located right on the picturesque Raritan River.
You're invited to visit Hillsborough, a great place to live, work, play, and do business anytime. And experience over 250 years of proud history in Hillsborough, New Jersey.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Hillsborough Township Planning Board meeting of September 9th, 2021. Please join me in a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be advised this meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, otherwise known as Sunshine Law. Notice of the 2021 annual meeting schedule has been provided to the officially designated newspapers, the township clerk, posted on the township's website, and available at the Hillsborough Township Municipal Complex. Further notice has been provided to the same that as of July 1st of this year, the remainder of the 2021 Planning Board meetings will be held in person at the Peter J. Biandi building. Live virtual participation will no longer be available. Also, application documents have been made available on the township's civic clerk website. Complete application files are available in the Planning and Zoning Department for inspection in accordance with the public meeting notice. And with that, may I have a roll call of board members and also board township professionals?
Deputy Mayor Delcourt is absent. Mr. Wagner.
Here.
Mr. Beeson.
Here.
Mr. Santa Armita.
Here.
Mr. Scobell.
Here.
Mr. Hestag.
Here.
Mr. Chicarelli.
Here.
Mr. Emick.
Here.
Mayor Lapani.
Here.
Vice Chair Julian.
Here.
Chair Sirachi.
Here.
Mr. Maskey. Here. Mr. Bernstein.
Here.
Mr. DeSessa.
Here.
Cass.
Michael.
Here.
Excellent. Okay, first up, we have a number of meeting minutes for approval. First up, meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2021. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any comments? And I believe all members except Nate's eligible to vote. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Beeson.
Yes.
Mr. Scobell.
Yes.
Mr. Hestag.
Yes.
Mr. Chicarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Emick.
Yes.
Mayor Lapani.
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian.
Yes.
Chair Sirachi.
Yes. Next are the meeting minutes of June 10th, 2021. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, the mayor has seconded. Any comments from the dais? Okay, everyone's eligible to vote except for Nate and Mr. Hashtag. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Beeson.
Yes.
Mr. Scobell.
Yes.
Mr. Chicarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Emick.
Yes.
Mayor Lapani.
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian. Yes. Chair Sirachi.
Yes. Next up, meeting minutes of July 1st, 2021. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments from the dais? Okay, everyone's eligible except for Nate. Nate, you've been on vacation.
Evidently, yeah. Good month.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Beeson.
Yes.
Mr. Scobell.
Yes.
Mr. Hestag.
Yes.
Mr. Chicarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Emick.
Yes.
Mayor Lapani.
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian. Yes. Chair Sirachi.
Yes, and finally, meeting minutes of July 8th, 2021. May I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Any comments from the dais?
Third.
Third. Okay. Ron second, just for the record.
Sorry.
So, any comments from the dais? Okay. Okay, this has got a few people that were on vacation with Nate. So everyone's eligible except the deputy mayor who's not here, Neil, Nate, and Kurt. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Beeson.
Yes.
Mr. Scobell.
Yes.
Mr. Hestag.
Yes.
Mr. Chicarelli.
Yes.
Mayor Lapani.
Yes.
Chair Sirachi.
Yes. Moving on, we have a resolution for consideration. JS Masonry LLC with file number of 20-PB-14-MSPV. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any comments from the dais? Okay. Are there any limitations, Eric, on who can vote for that? Who can vote on this?
The eligible members are everyone here except for Mr. Emick.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mr. Beeson.
Yes.
Mr. Scobell.
Yes.
Mr. Hestag.
Yes.
Mr. Chicarelli.
Yes.
Mayor Lapani.
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian.
Yes.
Chair Sirachi.
Yes. We don't have any planning board business this evening, so next up is business from the floor for matters that are not on the agenda this evening. So if there's anyone that would like to provide any commentary or comments to the board for, again, items that are not on this evening's agenda, please come forward. Okay, no one's coming forward, so We don't have any considerations of ordinances, so we will now move on to public hearings. We have 2 applications this evening, and I believe the first one up is Ernest and Tina Park, file 21-PB-12-S. It's block 25-11, lot 48.07, formerly block 207, lot 3, commonly known as 1928 Millstone River Road. The applicants are seeking minor subdivision approval and seek bulk variance to create 2 lots, 1 new single-family lot and 1 lot for the existing single-family dwelling with accessory structures on the property, which is in the Residential Agricultural Zone District and also the Millstone Valley Agricultural Historic District. And note that the property is identified in the Historic Preservation Plan element of the township's master plan, which was adopted back in April 5th, 2001, as it's located within the Millstone River Road Historic District. And with that up, Counselor.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. My name is Lisa Lively. I'm here on behalf of Vella Singer and Associates, and we are appearing before the planning. Okay. We'll get close. This microphone is never that.
Act like a rock star. Get close.
Okay. As we were saying, we are here before the board tonight with the applicants, Ernest and Tina Park, and they own the property at 1928 Millstone River Road. And tonight we are going to be providing testimony on behalf of the applicants, which explains the project in which the applicants seek a minor subdivision to subdivide the existing lot to create a new buildable lot. And you will hear testimony in support of the 1C variance, which is being requested in connection with the proposed lot. With that being said, testimony will be presented by the applicant's engineer, Mike Ford, in support of the variance request. And he will also address the comments included in the reports provided by the township professionals. With that being said, I'd like to question Mr. Ford and have him sworn in.
Okay, swear away.
You swear any testimony you give tonight is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
For the record, can you state, spell your name, give us your business address, please?
Michael Ford, F-O-R-D, with Van Cleef Engineering, 32 Brower Lane, Hillsborough, New Jersey.
Mr. Ford, if you can you please describe your educational background to the board?
I've appeared before this board numerous times. I'm a graduate of Rutgers University, 1985. Licensed engineer for over 30 years, and a licensed planner as well.
I think we've seen him enough that we can accept his qualifications, Chairman.
I think the glasses may have changed.
Thank you.
Yes, we will accept. Please continue.
It does feel odd to be back. Over a year.
Good to have you, Mike.
It does. There we go.
Good?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm back. We're back.
That's it. I guess it wasn't in the budget, Mayor?
Solar powered batteries.
I'll use this one until we need the other. Okay. Sorry.
So can you please briefly describe the project for the board before we get into all the reports?
Yes, it's as is introduced a minor subdivision to create 1 new buildable lot in the remaining lands with the existing dwelling and other structures on it. This is at the intersection of Amsterdam Drive and Millstone River Road. I'm sure you may know it well, as I know it as the vineyard on Amsterdam and the beautiful White House on Millstone River Road.
Okay, so let's start talking about the variance that's requested for the project, and we can look at the planning memorandum that we stated August 16th, 21.
Yes, and for the benefit of the board members and the public, have on the video the color rendering that's actually posted on the township website. It's a colorized version of the minor subdivision. The entire tract, which is 12.5 acres, is outlined in yellow, and in cyan color is the proposed lot line, which would create the 2.5 acre buildable lot on the southern portion of the tract and the remaining lands with the existing dwelling and other structures to the north.
We're going to mark this A1.
Okay.
And as it's actually, I downloaded this right from the township website, so it's, see, and that would be our A1. This is the minor subdivision plan, last revised July 14th, 2021. And with regards to the relief requested this evening, the application complies in all regards with the exception of the lot width for the proposed lot, and that is that portion of the lot that fronts on Millstone River Road. So with these types of lots where you have frontage on two roads, they're commonly referred to as through lots. The proposed dwelling would be on that portion of the new lot that fronts on Amsterdam Drive. And as that new 2.5 acre lot approaches Millstone River Road, it narrows down to a width of 171.6 feet, which is shy of the 200-foot lot width requirement that is technically required for the width along a road frontage. But in this case, for all intents and purposes, that's our rear yard, because we'll have no access for the new lot from Millstone River Road. The new lot will gain access from Amsterdam Drive, and as shown on the minor subdivision, we've illustrated the potential location for the new dwelling and driveway access. And the purpose of that really is it's making that lot any wider at Millstone River Road really serve no purpose for the new lot, and it's the applicant's intention to build a house for his brother on the vacant lot that be created and continue to live in the existing dwelling on the remaining lands. And in addition to the residential use on the remaining lands, which is over 10 acres, continue an agricultural operation, including the grapevines.
Mike, in your opinion, can this variance be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance?
Yes, it's making the new lot any wider really wouldn't serve any additional enhancement to the proposed lot, and would just make the lot with the agricultural use to continue a little smaller and serve no purpose for that lot. And I should say for the record that the existing dwelling with its access to Millstone River Road would remain unchanged. There's no proposed changes to the existing site improvements on the remaining lands.
And keeping with the planning memo, if you look at paragraph 5, can you please discuss the through lot requirements?
Yes.
How you comply?
Yes, the through lot requirements suggest that the access to the new lot would be from Amsterdam Drive as we have proposed it. One of the recommendations in, I believe, your engineer's report is that we restrict access for the new buildable lot or building lot such that it would not be permitted to have access to Millstone River Road, which is in accordance with those through lot provisions in the ordinance, and the applicant would agree to such a restriction. That is no driveway access to Millstone River Road for the new lot. And then with regards to Millstone River Road frontage, you'll see on the aerial in the exhibit that there's an existing vegetated area at the rear, I'll call it the rear of the new lot, that frontage along Millstone River Road, a tree row. The applicant would agree to continue to preserve and not disturb those trees, thus providing a buffer from Millstone River Road to the new dwelling lot. We have, with regards to site conditions, filed an application with NJDP for a freshwater wetland letter of interpretation. Those wetlands and wetland buffers are shown on the minor subdivision plan, and we recently secured that LOI from NJDEP. we did make it an appearance at your environmental commission, or the township's environmental commission. One of their requests was that we provide a copy of that freshwater wetland LOI when received, and I believe the applicant's attorney has provided the township planning office with a copy of that approval earlier this week, as well as the environmental commission's other request, which is to provide a copy of the natural heritage database findings, and that database findings report was provided to the planning office as well. And with regards to construction, you can see on the aerial, there's an open field or lawn area, maintained lawn area where the buildable lot is proposed, and all but for perhaps one tree in the existing tree row that lines the existing fence around the vineyards. There'll be no trees disturbed except for perhaps that one tree. And should I go on to the engineer's room?
I was just going to say,
Okay.
some of that may have already been addressed, but let's move on to the engineer's report, which is dated August 30,
Yes.
2021.
Okay. I'll go right to page 2 and say as an introduction, we have no objections or concerns about complying with any of the items listed under the general comments, items 1 through 9 in your engineer's review report. And with regards to testimony, the applicant intends to proceed with construction of the new dwelling as soon as he's able to. That would be subject to affirmative action by this board, as well as approval of a building permit, including the detailed septic system design and grading plan for the new dwelling. There also would likely be a requirement or a need to perhaps have a buffer averaging wetland permit from NJDP now that we have that LOI and know the full extent of the wetlands. None of the wetlands would be disturbed, but perhaps a portion of the wetland buffer would need to be disturbed, and we would just make the buffer bigger on another portion of the wetlands to comply with that state requirement. And of course, that would be subject to NJDEP approval.
What would that be for, Mike?
Excuse me?
Why would you be doing the buffer averaging?
There's a portion of the wetlands, and I can highlight it on the aerial now, or the exhibit right behind you. This portion of the wetlands right here has a 50-foot buffer with it.
Right.
And that comes close to where the new dwelling is proposed. So there may be a need to make that buffer a little smaller there and just make it bigger elsewhere on the wetlands, perhaps back here. So it'd be a buffer averaging. It's a standard regulated activity.
Yeah, I just have trouble reading this map. That's why I'm asking, because it says proposed lot, which is north of that, right? But then.
Well, there's
it
two
says on the-
proposed lots. One is, this is considered a proposed lot, which I've been referring to as the remaining lands.
Okay,
And then a proposed lot, the 2.5 acre lot at the south end of the tract.
that says the RA zone.
Right, the property is bisected by a zone boundary, which I'm highlighting now. It's in front of the existing dwelling, kind of paralleling Millstone Road. And there's a small portion in the Millstone Valley Historic District. And then the existing dwelling, as well as the proposed dwelling, are located in the residential agricultural zoning district.
And what's the block 20511? That's the existing lot, it says?
Yeah, the existing lot is 20511. That's the 12.6 acre lot. And then if you see on your plan, just to the left of that is proposed lot 4807, which is the remaining lands. Of course, we've got to get our lot numbers approved by your tax office. And the remaining lands would be just over 10 acres in size. And then the proposed lot we're identifying now in the minor subdivision as proposed lot 48.08. And that's over 2.5 acres in size.
And so that's where you'll do your buffer averaging
Correct.
from the 50-foot buffer of the wetland.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Part of those outside agency approvals, as identified by your engineer, would likely be a soil erosion and sediment control plan for the detailed grading and drainage for the new dwelling as well as the septic design, and that would be secured by the Somerset Union Soil Conservation District. That's item 8. Of course, we agreed to that. I've already, and I'm kind of going backwards, but I've referred to item 5, which is no access permitted for the new lot, building lot, no access permitted to Millstone River Road. The applicant agrees to that. Item 4, we have no knowledge of any easements or restrictions on the property. The proposed subdivision would be filed by deed, not by plat, so we could provide those meets and bounds descriptions of the new lots to your engineer, as well as the deeds for review and approval by the township and attorney.
Does the board have any additional questions?
I was going to ask Drew if you have good with his addressing your comments.
Yes, yeah, all the comments were addressed. I just have a question regarding on the proposed dwelling. It shows a water line and a well, but this is just going to be a home with well and septic?
Correct.
Okay, so.
Right.
And then I just noted that Amsterdam Drive is scheduled to be repaved this year by the township under the DOT program. So I just ask if there's going to be any construction that it be coordinated with that work, if you have to go into the road for any reason, the driveway or the gas connection.
Yeah, because it's a private well and the on-site septic, and likely the electric would be overhead until it gets to our property, and then perhaps underground to the house. The only utility that may be underground that you referenced is the PSE&G gas, which is really by them themselves.
Right.
They would supply that service. Given the timetable of getting the review memo, we haven't done research, but perhaps one alternative might be if gas is available, Millstone River Road, we could, if the timing doesn't work out with the overlay.
Okay.
But that's really a PSE&G matter.
Yeah.
Because the applicant doesn't even install that service.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Could you walk me through this threatened and endangered species database letter number 3 on the table 1, where it says rare wildlife species and wildlife on project based on search of landscape project 3.3 species base patches. The letters from DEP, it's December 7th, 2020. Yeah, the one that showed up today.
Yeah, I think you're referring to on page, and they have it, the copy I have is page 1 of 1 under item 3, rare wildlife species, wildlife habitat on the project site based on search of landscape project 3.3 species based patches.
Correct.
And it says yes, and then it says, refers you to page 1.
Correct.
I think they're referring to the bald eagle foraging. And we've had this on other applications, and I'm not aware of any restriction that would impact the construction because of that. And I just.
Yeah, I mean, I just got the letter today too, so.
Yeah.
I'm just going
Yeah,
through it, but I didn't know if you had looked into this or had any
Here, let me just keep the
ideas of what they were talking about.
Yeah, so the page 1 refers to the bald eagle. We know that's it in this area. And there's no restriction that I'm aware of that would preclude the construction of the house and the disturbance of the one tree.
Do you know where the tree was or?
The tree I'm referring to, see this, and this is likely not natural or native planted. There's a row of trees along the edge of the grape vineyard and fence. And there's one tree in this location that will, we don't want to touch any of them, but to the extent we may need to for grading and drainage around the new dwelling, there'd be one tree. And we've actually discussed this with the applicant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So is the construction and development in the foraging area for the bald eagle?
I think the foraging area that they're referring to is really the rivers, the Millstone River and the Raritan River. Yeah.
Because I do have experience that if this does fall within that foraging area, there are restrictions of when you can disturb the area when they're nesting. There's a period of like from January to August that is a restriction. So it should just be looked into.
So is what Mr. Ford said all right with you then?
Yeah, I know there's just time constraints that if it is determined that it is in that foraging area, then there's just time constraints of when you can disturb.
You're saying you don't know or it's not in that area?
Well, the one, we're talking about one tree that we would be impacting.
Oh, it's a tree.
Yeah. And then when they refer to the foraging, it's my understanding that they're foraging for food, which is along the rivers.
Okay. You all right with that?
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
In fact, south branch of the Raritan River, from Three Rivers to Neshannock Village, there's an overhead power line that crosses that river with an eagle nest on it. And I'm getting a chill thinking about it because probably about a month ago I was out there with the scouts canoeing and two eagles, one on each of the, sitting high up on the top of the overhead power line masts, checking us out, I guess.
Yeah. You guys for lunch?
It's nice, as a kid, you would only see that in the zoo. Now you see it in the wild. It's nice that they're coming back the way they are.
I have a question, and I'm not sure if Mr. Ford can answer this or possibly the attorney. So is it the contention of Mr. Park to maintain ownership of this land and build the house for his brother, or is he going to sell the land and the brother is going to build the house? So I guess my point is, any agreement that Mr. Park now has to continue with the new owner of that property, any agreements that he's being made now?
Yeah, the restrictions that we're agreeing to would go with the land.
Okay. I just didn't know if he was planning on selling it or keeping it.
So getting back to this wildlife species report, because there's a second report, or second table, the vicinity data. And that seems to have a few more items. And again, just curious as to what that impact is, because it seems you've got breeding and nesting in here and occupied habitat.
Yeah, we're not, for example, the wood turtle is identified, state threatened on, you're referring to, these are all labeled page 1 of 1.
Yeah, no, but it's officially table 2 based on.
Right,
the
okay,
table, so.
yeah. I just wanted to be able to bring everybody to the same page. These would normally impact your permitting regulations or limitations with regards to disturbance of riparian zones, floodplains, and wetland areas. We've identified we'd be going in for a wetland buffer averaging, and in this case, none of these endangered or threatened species that have been identified here elevated to the point where the DEP, in rendering their decision for the wetland, freshwater wetland layer of interpretation, approving the boundaries of the wetlands, that also includes identifying the resource value of the wetland, whether it's ordinary resource value or exceptional or intermediate in the middle. Exceptional would be normally required 150-foot buffer, and that would be tied into a potential impact from items such as the threatened or endangered species. So the fact that the LOI was issued with a intermediate resource value determination and a 50-foot buffer would lend itself that these endangered or threatened species are not impacted or don't impact that determination.
Okay. And I guess just following up on Kurt's comments too about some of these restrictions I noted in the letter, second to last page, it gives a link to the cautions and restrictions on NHP data. So I know, David, you can kind of take a dive into that, or if we add any, if there are any restrictions that you note can be added in.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
if the board chooses to approve this application, a condition of approval could be that prior to being, to the consistency review, that all of these questions would be answered.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
I have one more question. So as I look at this subdivision, I see that the purple line has a little bit of a jog in it, if you will. It looks like you have enough land that you could make this a conforming application, not requiring the variance. What's the reason for the jog? Is it to avoid the Millstone Valley Historic Zone? Why?
Well, that makes, I'll say that's a good point. That makes, I'll say, this lot cleaner in the sense that it's all located in one zone. It was really more a personal preference and the desire of the applicant to try to maintain as large a portion of lands on the remaining lands, over 10 acres, that ties into the agricultural use, the agricultural assessment of the lands so that you can maximize your area.
5 acres.
Right, minimum.
It's 5 acres,
Right.
right? Yeah.
And then with regards to widening this out, widen this out another 20 feet or so really wouldn't enhance the buildable area of where the house is being placed. And really just, I'll say, brings more restricted area. This is where the wetlands are that I'm highlighting now onto the rear of this lot. So there's really, and because that's a technical requirement for lot frontage, and of course, yes, that's true, this is our lot frontage, but this unique situation where it's a through lot, that's really our rear yard.
So what leg on that requires the variance?
This leg right here
Yeah.
along Millstone River Road.
So if you were to move that to make it conforming to 200 feet, does it then hit that other zone? And are there implications of that? I'm playing
Right.
ignorant. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that it hits that other zone. It would possibly come close to it. Would it impact the development of the proposed lot? I'd say no, because the zoning restrictions are with regards to where the house is located. We've shown the front, rear, and building setbacks for the proposed lot on the minor subdivision plan.
So for, like Mr. Maskey, if it touches are there any implications of it being in the MVH zone? Are there any additional hoops or hurdles that need to be jumped through or
I think
over?
generally speaking, you're better off not splitting zones, because you do get into some of those questions of two different zones. So unless there's a pressing need to cross the zone boundary, it's probably cleaner to keep it in one zone.
Okay, so this is not an avoidance of avoiding it to bring on a whole slew of additional requirements.
I mean, the use it's a single family house is permitted in both zones, so it wouldn't be anything to do with the use. Whether or not it impacted, the MVH has a higher lot size requirement. It's 5 acres instead of 2 acres. Whether or not that would come into play or not, I don't know. The rest of the bulk standards, it does not appear that the rest of the bulk standards are the same. So front yard, side yard, rear yard, and et cetera, they'd be basically the same. The only question might have to do with lot size, but.
Was there ever any issues with the natural nurturing to the north there? I remember them as an applicant one time, and I remember there were some issues. the applicant a while back. Was that farm, he was cutting trees down, or, I don't remember, but I'm just.
You're referring to not this property, but a nearby property?
It's like north of it, it says Naturally Nurturing LLC.
There were some operational issues there,
Yeah,
shall we say.
I remember that. I mean, it's not on your property, but
Right.
I don't know. It was coming onto your property from there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's the old right-of-way of Hillsborough Road between the two lots.
So I have maybe a question and a couple comments. One, was it an oversight that we didn't get the DEP letter that was dated December 7th until today, or is there any reason why that was?
No, normally it's not something that, it's not a checklist item or an application item. It's something that we request and then provide. It's interesting because we request it from DEP and then provide it to DEP as part of our LOI submittal. And I think the Environmental Commission just requested a copy of it because that's documentation that they know DEP, issues and requests.
And then I guess my last question, the only variance in this whole application is for lot 48.08 for the 171 versus 200 feet. That's it.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions, comments from the dais? Okay, then I'm going to entertain a motion to open to public.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so if there's anyone in the public or in the audience that would like to question Mr. Ford's testimony, please come forward. Okay. No takers. So, okay, I guess we're done for now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have no further questions.
Okay.
Other than we would just like to say, based upon the testimony presented, we would respectfully request that the board approve the application for it. Thank you.
Okay. Eric, do I need to formally close the public? Okay. So there's going to be one last bite at the apple before we close. Okay. Motion to close the public.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So is there any final questions from the dais? Okay. Mr. Bernstein.
We're looking for a motion to approve the application with the variance sought with the following conditions: that no driveway access for the new lot to Millstone River Road be agreed upon. Second condition, that the tree line along Millstone River Road is preserved. Third condition, that all the questions raised in the December 7th, 2020 letter from the State of New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection be answered prior to any township internal action being taken. The conditions of Mr. DeCessa and Mr. Massey's letter are met. And any owner, whether it is a new owner at this time or in the future, will be bound by any and all of these conditions.
Okay. Okay. So may I have a motion to approve the application based on Eric's outline?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay.
Nate
second.
Nate's back, he's talking.
Got to get on the books.
Make it up.
Okay, so we have a
Present.
we have a motion on the floor to approve the application as outlined by Eric. So roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Beason?
Yes.
Senator Armita?
Yes.
Mr. Scobell?
Yes.
Mr. Hashtag?
Yes.
Mr. Corelli?
Yes.
Mayor Lapani?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Mayor Sriracha?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Right. Good evening.
Nice to see you, Mr. Ford.
Thank you. You ever come by?
This way back. Huh? Hey, Michael, you doing okay? All right. All right, so next up, we have our second applicant for the evening, Green Care Farms LLC, Brzezinski, file 19-PB-21-SV, block 204, lot 45.01, Wood Road, and lot 45.02, 201 Woods Road. Applicant seeking minor subdivision, lot line adjustment, approval, C-bulk variances, and waivers to reconfigure the lot lines, increasing lot 45.02 to contain the existing single-family dwelling and accessory structure, and to develop a dementia care facility on lot 45.01 on properties in the residential agricultural zone district. And with that, Counselor, floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. David Singer, with the law firm of Ellis Singer and Associates, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant Green Care Farm. We are here on a subdivision application along with certain waivers related to the development of the property. Pursuant to state law, the MLUL, as well as Hillsborough Planning Board Attorney and Town Planner, the development is considered a community residence and is being processed by the township as a single-family dwelling. As such, no formal site plan approval is necessary by the planning board, which is why it's here before as a subdivision application. The testimony that will be presented tonight will include testimony from Green Care Farms engineer and planner Christopher Nusser, who will provide testimony concerning the subdivision application, variances, and waivers requested from the board tonight. Also present and available tonight are Dr. David Burrill and Raj Singh, co-owners of Green Care Farms, an entity which owns state-licensed dementia care homes in New Jersey. Lastly, we have available Jeff Fleischer, the architect who designed the architectural drawings submitted with the subdivision application. With that, I would like to introduce our engineer and planner, Mr. Christopher Nusser, to the board. Mr. Nusser?
I do. It's Christopher Nusser, N-U-S-S-E-R, with Engineering and Land Planning Associates, 140 West Main Street, Highbridge, New Jersey.
Mr. Nusser, can you tell the board your educational background?
Absolutely. I graduated from Rutgers University in 2006 with a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering. I've been practicing land use engineering since I graduated. I am a licensed professional engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey. Both licenses are in good standing. I've appeared before over 70 boards in the state, including this board on the application that you had as the resolution that you adopted this evening.
Okay.
With that, I'd like to.
I was just going to ask, any objections? Okay, we accept.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nusser, can you please explain the subdivision variances and waivers associated with the application? Specifically, the variance for impervious coverage and for an accessory building, namely the garage, parking waivers, and the tree mitigation compliance we're seeking tonight.
Sure. So I'm going to do this. There's two sets of plans here. There's the minor subdivision and variance plans, and then there's a second set of plans for the lot development plans. So I'm just going to start with the minor subdivision.
We're going to mark the minor subdivision plan as A1 and the second plan as A2.
I'm assuming we're planning on putting up a board to show that, because I got it.
Correct.
Correct.
On the wall.
Oh, you want to put them up? Yeah, okay.
It makes Kaz happy.
Whatever makes everybody happy is what I'm here to do.
Only Kaz counts.
Okay, so I have, this is sheet 3 of 3 of A1 that I'm going to be putting up.
What's the date on that?
This is dated 6/9/21. Good. So the properties before you tonight are block 204, lots 45.01 and 45.02. 45.01 is the larger lot. It's currently 13 acres, just shy of that. It is located with frontage on Woods Road, and then again on Woods Road. So it is a peculiar shaped lot. As you can see, it looks like it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle piece. With frontage in 3 separate locations along Woods Road as it goes through its bend. The property is generally wooded right now, and actually if I could mark this board here, A3, I think it's a little. Okay, so this is titled Green Care Farms Overall Exhibit. It was prepared by my office, dated today's date, September 9/21.
So I assume the board has not seen this exhibit.
That is correct. So what this is aerial photograph of the area with the subdivision lines superimposed on top of it. So as you can see, lot 45.01, again, the larger lot is generally wooded with an agricultural field across from Petrick Farm Road. There is this agricultural field, and otherwise, again, it's wooded. There are some improvements here. There's a lawn area, some solar panels. Those are actually associated with, not labeled on my plan, and I don't know it offhand here, with the lot here on Woods Road. I want to give you the lot number just so it's clean. So forgive me for a moment. Of course, everything is too small to read, so I will skip it.
Lot 45.
Is that 45? Thank you, I appreciate that. So those are really associated with lot 45. Lot 45.02, which is currently a 1.66 acre lot, is located at the second bend here of Woods Road. It has an existing residence on it. It has an existing garage and other attendant features, namely, and most significantly, the driveway. That lot, in its current configuration, is non-conforming in quite a number of ways. It's not conforming from an area standpoint, where the standard is 2 acres, and again, we're at 1.66 acres. The rear yard from the house to the rear setback line is 23.61 acres, feet, 23.61 feet. Sorry, I will slow down. And the existing impervious coverage on that lot is 15.5%. So this lot has some nonconformities. The garage itself actually is, I should clarify, on lot 45.01, even though it's for lot 45.02. So you can see it's not exactly the cleanest setup here. We have features for one lot located on a different lot, creating issues here as the applicant is a contract purchaser of just lot 45.01, and 45.02 will not be there. So in an effort to clean up the title here to put buildings on the lots they belong on, to make things more conforming. That's why we're here before you tonight for this minor subdivision. The resultant is that lot 45.01 will be a 12.28 acre lot as opposed to the 12.99 acres it was previously. Lot 45.02 becomes a 2.38 acre lot, so it becomes larger. The nonconformities surrounding the residence, namely the rear yard, go away. The rear line is now set 75 feet off of that, so that becomes conforming. The driveway gets reoriented, removing some impervious coverage, where right now it has this forked entrance. It'll be consolidated down to a much simpler location in front of the garage. That said, despite the fact that this lot has gotten significantly larger, part of what has happened is the improvements that weren't on the property came onto the property. So the impervious coverage, while it is reduced, both physically by the relocation of the driveway, and percentage-wise, it still exceeds the ordinance requirement of 10% at 15.41%. So variance relief is requested for that exceedance of the impervious coverage. Again, this is all longstanding existing impervious coverage that has not created any issues as a result of its placement there, and otherwise is functional. I think it's in many ways a result of the distance that the house is back from the street. The house is set back significantly from the road. It's not close up to the setback line, so the driveway ends up being much longer. Again, you have the garage, which was constructed many years ago and is located, again, bless you. It's not located proximate to the house, and therefore, again, we have some additional driveway because of that. The other piece of relief associated with this application is that accessory buildings are required to be in the rear yard, and clearly the garage is not. The garage is located well in front of the house. The house, again, was constructed at a distance of 187 feet from the street. In its current condition, the house, again, is only 23 feet off the property line, so it's just a fact of the matter that it's not located within the rear yard of the property. It's in front of the residence. But again, the building has existed without issue for a number of years. As far as that relief is concerned, I believe both of them to be hardships as a result of kind of the configuration of the lot and of the fact that these features exist. They have existed. The garage is there. We can't move the garage behind the house. If we did that, we'd only increase the impervious coverage more because we need more driveway to bring it back. I think the garage is in an appropriate location. It functions well without issue. The subdivision itself makes this lot far more conforming by eliminating certain bulk variances, such as the lot size and that rear yard setback to the house. So again, on balance, we're going to switch into a little bit of planning testimony. There's really no negative impacts as a result of the grant of the variance. It's really an acknowledgement of what exists today and has functioned without issue over time. I guess, Mr. Chairman, it's obviously your show, but I don't know if you want to go through questions on the subdivision before we move forward to the waivers for the rest of the development. or if you want me to continue straight through.
Unless anyone has any questions at this point, we'll continue.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. So now I'm moving on to A2. And I'm going to turn the subdivision plan around here. Now, this is sheet 4 of 13 of the lot development plans that were marked A2. This is dated 6/9/21 as well. So again, this is a little bit of a peculiar situation in that we're not here for site plan approval from you. We're simply here for waivers associated with the construction of this facility. So as your professionals have outlined, there are a couple of waivers to discuss. The principal ones relate to the layout of the parking and the circulation around the site. So the entrance is located directly across from Petrus Farm Road, so you don't have issues of cross movements of somebody trying to leave Petrick Farm Road if this were to be offset in some way. So they're lined up directly to make it a cleaner intersection. The driveway comes in at 24 feet wide. To the north, there is an 8-space parking lot, which again also has a 24-foot aisle. It then continues as a one-way in this loop around the front of the building or the side of the building at 20 feet in width, which then becomes 24 feet in width where these 4 parking stalls are located to the west. And then as it comes back around the loop on its way out, the overall width of pavement there is 20 feet and the traveled way is 12 feet because there are 5 parallel parking stalls in there, kind of overflow spaces in case they're needed, that are 8 by 22. The remaining stalls are 9 by 18. Those stalls comply with the RSIS requirement, but not your code. Your ordinances require a 10 by 20 space. Your ordinance requires a 30-foot aisle for your two-way traffic and a 25-foot aisle for the one-way traffic. This is not a shopping center. This is not a busy doctor's office. This is a very low traffic generator. It has permanent residents with some staff that are there to attend to them. But it is not something where cars are constantly coming and going through the day. And really the need to have these oversized aisles, we don't really feel it's necessary. It's additional impervious. It's additional pavement that gets installed that has to be managed from a stormwater perspective without the real benefit to it. 24-foot aisle for the parking spaces or the two-way drive aisle is fairly standard and common width. The 20-foot width on the north side of the loop really is in excess of what is typical. But what it does allow is it allows for, if somebody's dropping somebody off or something off, they can park along there and another vehicle can still pass next to it. 20 feet is still wide enough for two-way traffic. And then as you come around that 12-foot aisle width is fairly typical for a one-way aisle when you have parallel parking next to it. In my opinion, if you went to a 25-foot aisle that's on a one-way, that's a fairly typical width for an aisle when it comes to two-way traffic. And I think you invite people a little bit to to think that two-way traffic is permitted in there when you don't otherwise want them to be doing that. So I think, from a practical perspective of what this use is, from the demand of the use, from the function of it, I think the waiver request to go from 30 feet down to 24 feet for the two-way aisles and from 25 feet for the one-way down to 12 and 20, again, is reasonable as well. We had depicted in the documents that fire trucks can make turning movements and get in and out of the site without issue. So there's not a need to have that additional pavement on the site. The second part of that is the parking stall dimensions. Again, 10 by 20 is the required, where we have 9 by 20 and 8 by 22 for the parallel stalls. Now, 9 by 18 is again, RSIS standard that this meets. This is a residential facility, and we believe is very appropriate. Again, it's not a shopping center. It's not a doctor's office. We don't have the need to have wider spaces than 9 feet. It's very practicable. And when it comes to the parallel stalls, I think they're actually probably a little wider than they really need to be. If you look at the RSIS standard and you look at what the requirement is for the parking aisle alongside a public street, that's only 7 feet, and we're at 8 feet. So where, typically you want that 9 feet or 10 feet as your ordinance requires to be able to give room for people to get into and out of their cars. In this case, there's not a car parked next to you on these parallel stalls, so there's not a need to have this additional width on the parking stalls. So we believe that, again, that waiver is justified in being granted. I do want to ask Mr. Maskey, in your letter, on page 3, this is your August 16, 2021 memo. On page 5, on page 3, section 5, under required waivers, you note that the buffer must meet the technical requirements at 188.38. That section, as I read it, for this 30-foot wide buffer, says that the buffer is required when you have residential uses adjacent to collector and arterial streets, or non-residential uses abutting to residential uses or zones. But I don't believe that, we're a residential use abutting a residential use, so I don't know that section is going to apply to us in this case, but I would like feedback.
Well, I thought it did.
What's that?
Under my interpretation, it does apply.
So we would require a 30-foot wide buffer from a property line, any property line, then where on the southern property line, so where the parallel parking stalls are, and this is a requirement when you have more than 10 spaces in a parking lot. In total, we have 17 spaces. In this section of the parking lot, we have 9. So again, it's a very limited set of parking that we have here. We are probably slightly more than half of that 30-foot required in this area. I would note that some of the reasons why this should not be an issue for you, we shall say, is we have a landscaping buffer that is proposed between those properties. It is evergreen to provide screening. Where many times you have parking when it's along a property line like this, that parking is facing into those properties and it's shining light into those properties. You get nuisance factors from that. You get cars coming and going at odd hours that are going to intrude upon those residential uses. In this case, again, it's a very limited use in its intensity. None of the parking stalls directly face this residence, so you're not going to have somebody parking and their lights streaming into this residential property. This residence itself is located on the, on the opposite side of their property towards the southern side, so there's a good separation to begin with in between. So overall, while we don't meet that 30-foot requirement, I think from the spirit of that that requirement, we are providing a buffer and ameliorating any nuisance that could come from that parking being close to the property line. I think so I'm going to work off of Mr. Maskey's letter here and go down to section 6 where we talk about tree mitigation. We do require a waiver for the removal of trees outside of the critical footprint, which again is 40 feet from, in this case, because it's considered single-family residential, 40 feet from the dwelling, or in this case, the main building, or the driveways, or the septic. This does not have a septic system, but we do have the driveway and the main building. The attendant features in the rear and then even along the edge, there is disturbance of the wooded area outside of that 40 feet. That ordinance is really geared towards your typical single-family dwelling, typical residence, not a facility such as this. A lot of these features in the rear, or all these features in the rear, are agricultural in nature. Not going to explain the operations of the site. If you do have questions, the applicant is here. But as part of the programming for their facility, they engage the residents in agricultural activities. So they have a greenhouse, they have a barn with a chicken coop. And so there's agricultural activities happening in this rear area, and that's all beyond the critical zone. There's also detention basin in the rear and another detention basin in the front. Again, these areas are beyond that critical zone. I will note that the development itself was located in such a way so that it was predominantly located within that existing agricultural field to minimize disturbance to the trees. The removal is certainly less than 20% of the wooded area on the lot. And we are providing mitigation for the tree removal, which is on sheet 6 of the plan set. The compliance with that's demonstrated, providing the mitigation in accordance with the ordinance requirements.
Can I ask one question, if I may, for a second?
Yes, sir.
Councilor Mayor, I'm looking at this application there. It looks like they're asking for us to approve lot line changes right now, not site plan approvals. So are we talking about things that we really need to be talking about? If we're just looking to change some lot lines and they got to come back to submit a plan?
This is one of those, look, Mr. Maskey and I have had moments of sheer terror. What you're being asked to do is approve a lot line change and site approvals for a single family home that does not require site plan approval by this board. Because the state of New Jersey and our township ordinance defines this kind of facility ostensibly as a single family house. So if this were not a single family house, then the answer would be yes, this would be simply a lot line change. They would be in here and come back to you with a site plan application. But because it is a single family house, you're not going to get a site plan application for the buildings. But you do have the right to deal with the concurrent items that come from the creation of the property, which is the buffers, the parking, the tree mitigation. So it's, for lack of a better phrase, it's a hybrid.
Okay.
Yes, I concur. But perfect example is the previous application. So there we had a subdivision with a proposal to build a single-family house on the new lot. They didn't come in with the details of the proposed house, but if that proposed house had required certain bulk requirements, you would have made a decision on it at the same time as the subdivision. So it's an oddity because it's a fairly large facility, but by law, we have to treat it as a single-family house. But it's basically the same situation as the park application.
Okay. You could continue. I was just seeing if we.
But that also gives you the ability to deal with the impactful matters.
Okay.
Parking space size, tree mitigation, buffers.
So it's still only a plan application. We're just doing, it's all considered under lot lines.
You know, it would be simple, but it's not
It's
that
not
simple.
Not so simple.
Not so simple.
Okay.
If it was simple, you guys, you wouldn't need you guys.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just was trying to
No.
clarify because it didn't say anything on the application and you said it wasn't a site plan approval, so that's why I got.
Understood. It's, I think we kind of anticipated that there would be that question.
Okay.
Because it is a very peculiar situation. Going through the remainder of Mr. Maskey's letter on landscape and lighting, we may have requested the lighting waiver, but I believe we comply with the lighting ordinance in that we have an average illumination through the parking lot of a half a foot candle with a minimum of 0.3. The fixtures are 15 feet tall in compliance with the ordinance, and there is no spill onto any of the adjacent residential properties. Beyond that, again, and I'm limiting my testimony to you to be based upon the waivers that we're here seeking and not going, that's why I'm not going through the full site plan. If you would like me to answer questions or go through that in some more detail, I'm certainly happy to do that. But that is the waivers that we believe are required for the development.
How about, I was going to say the additional comments, section 8 of Mr. Maskey's memo.
Yes,
I don't think we hit any of those.
so as it comes to the commercial vehicles, we will comply with that section of the ordinance and the limitations that it comes with.
I'm sorry.
So you're taking that, the waiver request away?
Yes, I mean, we're allowed to park one commercial vehicle in the residential property, and I don't believe we need to have anything more than that. Correct.
As long as it meets the gross vehicle weight standards.
Correct. Yeah, and we will meet
Well.
those requirements.
Section 188-51.1 of the Stormwater Management Code.
The type and frequency of deliveries, I think the applicant would be better suited to answer that question for you than myself. It's sort of operational. On 8C, there is no signage proposed for the site other than the safety traffic signage that's there. There's no, pillar sign out front, no monument, nothing like that. The trash enclosure is located on this, closer to the southern property line. So I'm indicating here, kind of in the top of the loop. While it's not falling afoul of any requirements, Mr. Maskey is asking if we could relocate that. Previously, in some previous iterations, we had it located in this 8-space parking lot, kind of at the top of that. That actually would require a waiver because it would be an accessory structure and it would be in the front yard. I don't believe that the applicant would have any reservations about relocating it to that location if the board was willing to grant that relief. Again, it kind of puts it in the front yard. Nobody really likes to have the trash enclosures in the front yard. Generally speaking, it is located beyond the 75-foot front yard setback and on the other side of the detention basin. That would be an option. Or we could do our best to slide it around the circle a little bit and get it from 14, slightly under 14 and a half feet and get it maybe a little bit further to 16, something like that.
Yeah, I don't think I had the front yard in mind when I made that recommendation.
Because it looks like you can put it up against the other residents and not really resolve anything.
Yeah, we're just kind of horse trading it around a little bit.
So I think, so Dave, what was your vision so that we can
Well, I
get
think
to the
they
point?
need to, a condition of approval perhaps could be that they explore other options for placing the trash enclosure to increase the distance from the residential property. To the satisfaction of myself and Mr. DeSessa.
Well, and if I may, the residents on, so if we, to the chairman's point, we located here, the residence is fairly close. In this case, the residence is towards the front of the property here to the east, closer to Woods Road. And this is located almost in the back corner of their property. So if you're from the property, this is closer, but from the residence itself, this is got a pretty decent setback. You can get my scale and
Are
measure,
you
but
testifying that there's no place else to put it?
Yeah, David, I have a question on that. I mean, are we talking about a dumpster?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you just dealing, this is what I do. I mean, the trash people, they drive into it. They're like, on a circle does not work. They drive into it, they pick it up. So it has to be straight, like in towards, again, what I'd be looking somewhere in there.
Did I answer your question, Mr. Massey?
well, I mean, if we're talking about locating it where the,
Mr. Singer, will the applicant agree to explore other options for placing
Yeah.
the dumpster?
yes,
Yes.
yeah,
Thank
certainly.
you.
If it requires relief because it ends up in the front yard, is that something, is that a power the board's willing?
Forget the front yard, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And then on 8E, there is a hot box located on the south side of the entrance driveway that the water company has required. Mr. Maskey is asking for some additional screening around that, and we have no issue doing that.
Yeah, just so the board knows, this is something we've been asking all applicants. Everybody has to put this hot box out front now for the water company. So we've been requesting everybody to do some appropriate landscaping to minimize the impact. And that landscaping would be to at the approval of the board engineer.
This is this big silver thing they put in the front.
Yeah,
now, right?
exactly.
Looks like a big locker.
Yeah.
If the board would like, so we can finish up the planning memo, we can swear my client, Mr. Raj Singh, in to answer 8B with any additional comments.
Before Mr. Nusser leaves, it was
Not leaving.
Oh, I'm not going
comment,
anywhere.
before we switch people though.
Sure.
I don't believe you addressed the adequacy of the parking. Like I said in my memo, we don't have a specific standard, but we do have standards for extended care facilities. Can you talk a little bit about how the 17 spaces will be adequate or enough for what the needs of the facility are?
Again, it's a 15-bed facility. So it would require, per that standard, the extended care facility would require one space for every 3 beds. So that would be 5 spaces plus 1 for every employee. So that would be 12 spaces for employees that would be available. And I think, not to, again, go back and forth here, but with Mr. Singh's testimony, I think he can testify to the number of employees that he would have on site and the adequacy then of the parking.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I see you also have 2 handicap spaces, is that based on the same kind of ratio of parking is why you would have 2 handicap spaces?
Technically, it would only require 1 for the number of spaces that are here, but given the type of facility that it is, I think we feel it's appropriate to have
Have an extra.
2. Yeah.
And is there a reason why it is tucked all the way in the back of the lot there? Is that an entrance?
That is, yeah, that's where the front entrance is there.
Thank you.
That is correct.
And also the variance request for why you need a variance.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, you swear any testimony you give tonight is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
If you could, spell your name and give us your business address, please.
Rajiv Singh, Singh, 2230 Route 206, Belmead, New Jersey, 08502.
Mr. Singh, could you please tell the board about the types and frequencies of deliveries that you anticipate at the facility?
Involvement with the project and his expertise. So he's not giving us a proposal in the abstract, I assume that's what he told him.
Mr. Singh, can you explain to the board what your capacity is with regard to this project?
Yeah, so Green Care Farms was started approximately 3 years ago. The concept was started by Dave and I. I visited about 50 different facilities in Europe and the United States. I've also resided on some of those facilities. My partner Dave is regularly calls on memory care homes, including the memory care wing at Princeton Care Center, which is a nursing home located in Princeton. So regarding the operations, we both have very detailed knowledge of the facility. So unfortunately, these facilities don't get a lot of traffic. The residents don't have home, they don't drive. So the 15 people that will be there don't have cars. At peak time, we will have 5 employees. At peak time, we will have 5 employees. The patient to caregiver ratio is going to be 1:3. Again, that's if we're at 15 residents. And as far as traffic is concerned, really the only thing that we'll have regular, we'll have the, trash removal, food service delivery, and then also, incidental deliveries, for patient care, but not a lot of traffic.
So just quick question, is there any state requirements, number of employees or caretakers per resident?
No, but the average for this type of facility is 1:8. So our facility is going to be 1:3. That's what we're striving for.
Okay.
Hi. What is the frequency of visits from EMS and other, whether it's police or fire or emergency services for the patients? Or for
I think Dave, probably you can comment on that a little bit better than me.
Yeah, I swear. A report from Mr. Singh before you. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll park that question. So, and also just for clarification, I'm going to assume that you're co-owners, equal co-owners, and I'm going to say operators?
Yes, we are
Or
50-50,
primary
50%
principal
each.
owner?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yep.
Mr. Singh, how many of these facilities do you and your partner own?
None.
This would be the first one.
Yeah, this is the first licensed dementia care facility in Somerset County and Hunterdon. There isn't one in Hunterdon County. So this will be the first facility of its type in Somerset County. So there aren't any.
Have you been licensed by the state?
I am licensed as a assisted living administrator.
This type of facility requires state licensing.
Yes,
Has the state granted you a license yet?
provisional license. The final approval will be coming from DCA, but we do have a provisional approval from New Jersey Department of Health. And once we get, the next step would be for us to get DCA approval.
And what triggers DCA approval?
Well, they review the architectural drawings and they review the site plan drawings.
So you need board approval to then go to DCA, is that correct?
Yeah.
And obviously, that's a condition of this application, council.
Condition of the application?
Initial approval is that your client can't build the facility unless he's approved by the applicable state authority to do so.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So you don't have a problem having that as condition of approval.
That's
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board?
Does the DCA also do the building inspections? Or do they just grant the approval and it comes back to do you know if it's goes through the local building or does the DCA come in?
No, I think the municipal, they do the inspections.
I have a question for Mr. Maskey, perhaps. At what point does this is an acceptable use in residential, I think you're saying? And at what point does it not become a permitted use? Is there a number of beds or a size of the building or the facility?
Yeah.
When does it exceed that point?
I believe 15 beds is the maximum. And it has to meet certain other qualifications as a licensed facility for it to qualify as a quote-unquote single-family use within the zone.
Okay, so at some future date, there won't be, come back and add 2 stories and triple it or quadruple the size unless it's a change in.
I think that could change it into a different category at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Unless the state permits it.
One, do we know if it's sprinklered? The buildings?
Yep, there's a sprinkler.
Okay, thank you.
Since we have the owner up and he's testifying, so obviously you're using only a very small portion of this property that you're subdividing. Is there any plans to use any other portion of that property for any other uses?
Not at this time. We were thinking about maybe doing some walking paths in the future for our residents,
But no
golf
construction.
courts and stuff like that.
No construction of any.
No.
Maybe another general question for our.
John, before. Is the applicant willing to agree that any future construction on the site requires planning board approval?
I guess it would depend on what future construction would be.
Well, future construction period, because right now you're approved for a 15-bed unit, which is the maximum permitted. So any further expansion of the current proposal and/or any use of the property for reasons other than the facility, i.e. a further subdivision, et cetera, would require planning board approval.
So if there was a further subdivision and those lots were sold off,
Or your client decided that they were going to do something else on the property other than the facility currently, would trigger planning board approval.
well, subdivision would have to come before. But in terms of the use, if it's fully conforming, what would be approved?
The only fully conforming item that would come would be another single-family house. Short of that, it requires approval, site plan approval.
We would have to get approval anyway, right?
Right,
Yeah.
that's what they have to come for subdivision approval anyway, and unless it was fully conforming, you have to come for approval anyway. So it essentially would be adhering to the ordinances as
You
is.
have no problem with that.
No, we did hear the ordinances.
Sorry.
My question, and it might be for our professionals, is who owns lot 4502? And are they, I mean, we're giving them some land, or are they happy with that? Or are they, I'm paraphrasing, but they're involved here, and I don't know who owns that property. And if they are,
That might be better answered by Mr. Singer, but I believe there was a family trust involved here.
Yeah, we have a member of that family here in the audience as well, but it's all part of a purchase and sale agreement.
okay, thank you.
Okay. So perhaps we'll get
Yeah, well,
the other part.
Motion to open.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so if there's anyone in the public that would like to ask Mr. Singh or question him on anything of his testimony, please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Joseph Kutusky, 12 Petrick Farm Road in Hillsborough. Ketusky. Mr. Singh, did you apply in another town locally for this same project in the recent future?
Yes, in Franklin Township.
And as we all know, since you own no other facilities, this would be the first. The reasons for that not going through in Franklin Township?
Well, no, we did get the C variance and it did go through. We decided not to proceed. We wanted to pursue this property because we like it better.
Wasn't it that you couldn't meet some of the ordinance
Nope,
requirements?
100% of them were met and we got a C variance was granted. And it was also, I guess, memorialized. What do they call it? Yeah. So that's all public record.
Okay. I think that would be probably helpful to the board in making the decision, just that they were aware that you did apply somewhere else.
Yeah. We might pursue that property. It's at 389 Bennett's Lane, near South Biddlebush, near that intersection. We may, that property is still, has not, the sellers have not sold it to anybody else yet. And, it's pretty much approved, ready to go. All of our architectural renderings done, all the site plan. Site plan was done by Van Cleef Engineering, Mike Ford did that.
Is this the place, or will there be another to make comments regarding the project?
Just questions for his testimony.
Just for his
Questions him?
testimony.
That's the only question I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We got a few more questions. No, yeah.
Hi, my name is Edward J. Brisky, and my parents own
Can you
this
say the
whole-
address, please, for the record?
Spell the last name.
81 Green Avenue, Belmead, New Jersey. My parents, BRZYSKI. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak to the board. And I remember approaching Mr. Maskey maybe 5-6 years ago, and I said, the property that my parents have, which is lot 45.02, is an odd trapezoid-shaped lot. It's not conforming. And I talked to Mr. Maskey, I said, we'd like to square it up. And he said, that's a good idea. And I kind of put that on the back shelf. My father passed away, and my mother, we've been taking care of her for over 10 years now, my wife and I, over at our house in Belmead. She has Alzheimer's, 4th stage Alzheimer's. So when Mr. Singh came over here to purchase the property, I I was thrilled because we had developers that came and they wanted to put in streets and really develop that. This is such a low impact. It preserves that whole area. I'm so happy that most of this property is going to be preserved, low impact development. And another thing I asked them to do is I said, can we square up this lot and make it conforming? Because my nephew, Christopher Brisky, and his wife purchased the house. My dad and I built this house on lot 45.2 back in 1971. And back then, my dad was going to build a cul-de-sac over there and some other, he passed away, didn't come to fruition. That's why the lot was odd shaped. So they were nice enough to work with me and with my nephew, Christopher. Let's make the lot conforming. It doesn't interfere with their project. I'm thrilled that there's a facility here that will care for people that have Alzheimer's in a humane way, because the facilities that I've been to, people are stuck on a fourth floor somewhere. They can't use the elevators to go down. They're inside all day. This facility allows people to go outside. It's on the first floor. It's such a humane way of being able to take care of people. And the amount of people that they're going to have caring, one caretaker for 3, it's wonderful. It's wonderful that a facility like this can be here in this area in Somerset County to be able to take care of needs of aging baby boomer populations that have a mom or dad that may need this care. So I'm just thrilled. And I thank you, the board, for this opportunity to talk to you and to be able to put through this project. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Okay, John?
So that was nice commentary, but please keep your comments to questions on testimony of Mr. Singh. We got the commentary later.
Good evening. Mr. Singh, I have 2 questions. Do I need to read in Henry Shu, H like Henry, S like Sam, U like Uncle? My address is 6 Lanning Way, Lanning. 2 questions for Mr. Singh. Quickly, can you just confirm for us the LLC making this application is a for-profit organization? Is that true?
It's for public benefit. It's a B corporation.
Okay. So it would file on the IRS. What type of file?
A B corporation.
Okay.
You can look it up.
Secondly, you had mentioned in your testimony that you passed over the Somerset location, the Franklin Township location.
Yep.
And you prefer this one. Can you tell us why?
Well, that's about 5 acres. This is much larger. So we could do walking paths. And that, I don't know if you're familiar with that area, but that has like high tension wires over it. And it has septic. So we had development issues. There's also a large retaining wall that was required. And we just think that this is just a much more prettier place to build this is going to be our first facility. We really we don't want to cut corners. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else in the public that would like to question Singh's testimony? Okay, you may step down for now. And we can bring up.
I have Mr. Dave Burrow come up.
Okay. We're going to swear you, I'm going to swear you in.
Just for the board's edification, and Maskey raised the question. There will be an opportunity to question the engineer when he comes
Yep.
back on all of his testimony. I don't know if people would think that we sort of short-circuited all the board.
No, I've got questions for the engineers, don't worry.
The basic, it's always
Yep.
taking that short.
Right.
Out of time.
Yep. Okay, we got.
Swearing in testimony you give tonight is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
For the record, can you state and spell your name and give your business address, please?
David Barile, Barile, 566 Princeton Kingston Road, Princeton, New Jersey, 08540.
Okay. And John, yeah, or was it Kurt? I forget.
No, the question I had was, what is the level of activity of emergency services and police and maybe fire, but mainly emergency based on the residents?
So the residents, we're looking for this facility, the residents with mild Alzheimer's dementia. So meaning they're higher functioning, they'll wake up, they'll put their own clothes on, maybe with some guided supervision. They'll be watched throughout the day, assisted with food preparation. So these will be higher functioning people. The level of acuity or illness will not be high, as you might imagine, like a nursing home or assisted living facility. Some will age in place and will remain there, and over time require more medical attention. But I can't imagine, I would be guessing if I told you how many times you'd expect a 911 call or an EMS visit. I can tell you that I'm the medical director of a facility up in South Brunswick with 11 residents there, and they're all my patients. Twice in the last year, there was a 911 call. Someone fell and broke a hip and had to go out. And those residents are pretty frail. I think they've been aging in place for a while, but I can't imagine it'd be more than that.
Can you tell us, give us a little bit about your background just for the board?
I'm a geriatrician by trade. I oversee geriatrics and palliative medicine at Princeton Hospital. I'm founder and medical director of Goals of Care Coalition of New Jersey, which is a nonprofit devoted to improving end-of-life care for New Jersey residents. And I have a few other titles in Princeton, New Jersey. I have a private practice, and I work part-time for Princeton Hospital and a few other facilities as medical director.
And just to go with the operations, just because now, as you described, the residents are higher functioning. I guess with regards to security, I mean, just because I think we just recently had someone yesterday wandering from Carrier, so just wanted to make sure, what's the security for the residents?
It will
and
be a
their ability
locked
to get out?
facility, but fenced in, and there'll be enough supervision, people on hand to assist if people wanted to go out. One of the main concepts of this facility is that residents will be able to go outdoors on their own, at least out to the garden space, which will be fenced in, and the greenhouse. And it's architecturally designed and so that it promotes wayfinding. So people with memory impairment, if they forget why they've just walked into this room or why they turned a corner, every point of interest will be within sight wherever you're standing in the facility. So, and that's why it's V-shaped, so that if you're walking in from outdoors, you can see your door. It's not a long corridor. It doesn't have like a sharp turn where you're wondering what's around that corner. So it's architecturally designed to promote wayfinding, which will reduce stress and anxiety in these residents who have no memory and therefore get a lot of agitation, a lot of over-prescribing you'll find in a lot of the traditional facilities. So what we've learned from facilities like these in Europe and across the world, the rates of the amount of drug prescribing, psychotropic meds, meds to reduce agitation is actually less in architecturally designed buildings like this. So, and residents will have something purposeful to do, right? Tending gardens, preparing meals, working in the greenhouse.
Okay, good.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I think you just touched on it, but could you expand a little bit on how the facility works? You have a barn, you have a greenhouse, you have a chicken coop. Can you tell us how all that plays into the facility?
Well, we're hoping that everything that we grow in the greenhouse, so we're looking at hydroponics or aquaponics, and we're hoping that residents will be actively engaged and involved in gardening in the greenhouse and outside the greenhouse. So people will have usual activities for residents. We'll have art activities, music activities, and so on, socializing, and but most of what the activities they'll be involved in will be food prep, gardening, collecting chicken eggs, and working outdoors and just being outdoors.
And what would be stored in the barn? What would be stored in the barn?
Just material for gardening and,
No livestock.
no.
No, not hay.
No, I mean, I think we haven't decided on the number of chickens, but it's not going to be many. And no roosters.
Additional questions, comments?
You mentioned that there were 5 employees at peak time. What's the lowest amount of employees that you would house in the facility?
2 overnight. Yeah, 2 overnight.
What's the time there typically?
It would likely be probably the 11 to 7 shift.
Okay,
Would be 2 overnight. Yeah.
thanks.
Okay, I guess, have a motion to open to public? Or we already, or do we
Make that motion open.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
You know, making short, but anyone in the audience that would like to question this witness on their testimony? Okay. All right, thank you. And Mike, how you doing? You sure?
Thanks.
Well, that's why I'm asking you. Do you? Okay, so we're gonna do, what do we want, about 5-minute recess? All right, so it's about 9:20, we'll reconvene at 9:25.
Hillsborough, New Jersey, celebrating 250 years of a rich history. Hi, I'm Mayor Sean Lapani, and I'm proud to showcase Hillsborough, one of the best places to live in America. From the preserved farms that help feed the world, to the Vanderveer House, to the John R. Stott's house, restored and currently utilized for business, to the magnificent and world-famous Duke Farms, where you can walk or ride a bike through their historic grounds, to the iconic Neshannock Reformed Church, and just down the road is our fabulous Neshannock Mill, located right on the picturesque Raritan River. You're invited to visit Hillsborough, a great place to live, work, play, and do business anytime. And experience over 250 years of proud history in Hillsborough, New Jersey. Good morning, and welcome to the opening of the Peter J. Biandi Route 206 bypass here in Hillsborough Township. Thank you for joining us here today for this very much anticipated event here. Can't think of one that we've been waiting for longer. As we open the remaining sections of this vital roadway, which has been named in memory of the late Assemblyman Peter J. Biandi. This roadway will officially open for traffic on Saturday, June 5th. I'm joined here today by my colleagues, the Hillsborough Township Committee, Deputy Mayor Frank Delcor, Committeeman Doug Thompson, Committeewoman Janine Erickson, and Committeeman Jeffrey Wright. I would also like to thank this opportunity to introduce some other guests here this morning. Senator Kip Bateman, who was a sponsor of the legislation to actually get this road named after the late Assemblyman Biandi, and thank you for that. Assemblyman Roy Fryman, Commissioner Paul Drake, and please help me welcome Ms. Joan Biandi. Thank you for being here today on this historic day for Hillsborough Township. The late Assemblyman Peter J. Biandi was a pillar in our community for over 35 years. As a result of time serving the community as a member of the Township Committee, Mayor, Freeholder, and Assemblyman, he was often referred to as Mr. Hillsborough. During his entire tenure in public life, he remained committed to the betterment of Hillsborough. His tireless dedication and support of Hillsborough was unwavering, hence why in 2013, this roadway was officially named after Peter J. Biandi. The bypass is a vital part of Hillsborough's economic development. Not only will the bypass lessen congestion and traffic along the existing 206, but will also serve as the impetus for a future town center that is envisioned in our township master plan. This long-awaited and much-anticipated vision is now a reality. Originally considered in the early 1970s as the Hillsborough Township began to develop, unfortunately it remained only a concept until the early 2000s. In August 2010, township, local, and state officials broke ground to officially start the construction of the bypass at midsection, similar to where we're standing right now. We thank past and current state administrators for their diligence in seeing this project through. This portion will shift traffic on the new 3.6-mile section of US 206 to the east of the existing highway between Mountain View Road and Old Somerville Road, creating the opportunity for further development of the town center along the current 206. The project limits are from Mountain View Road to Hillsborough Road on the southern end, and from Animal Road, Somerset County Road 514, to Old Somerville Road on the northern end. To the north, the widening will continue until the final phase is complete. We have looked forward to this day, and we now look forward to the development of our downtown, Hillsborough Main Street vision. Please stay tuned as we continue to grow and improve and remain as one of the best places to live and work in America. Again, thank you all for being here this morning. We will now have the official ribbon cutting, and that will conclude our ceremony. And again, thank you to our honored guests who are here today, and Ms. Joan Biandi, and thank you very much. One, two, three. Hillsborough, New Jersey, celebrating 250 years of a rich history. Hi, I'm Mayor Sean Lapani, and I'm proud to showcase Hillsborough, one of the best places to live in America. From the preserved farms that help feed the world, to the Vanderveer House, to the John R. Stott's house, restored and currently utilized for business, to the magnificent and world-famous Duke Farms, where you can walk or ride a bike through their historic grounds, to the iconic Neshannock Reformed Church, and just down the road is our fabulous Neshannock Mill, located right on the picturesque Raritan River. You're invited to visit Hillsborough, a great place to live, work, play, and do business anytime, and experience over 250 years of proud history in Hillsborough, New Jersey. Hillsborough, New Jersey, celebrating 250 years of a rich history. Hi, I'm Mayor Sean Lapani, and I'm proud to showcase Hillsborough, one of the best places to live in America. From the preserved farms that help feed the world, to the Vanderveer House, to the John R. Stott's house, restored and currently utilized for business, to the magnificent and world-famous Duke Farms, where you can walk or ride a bike through their historic grounds, to the iconic Neshannock Reformed Church, and just down the road is our fabulous Neshannock Mill, located right on the picturesque Raritan River. You're invited to visit Hillsborough, a great place to live, work, play, and do business anytime. And experience over 250 years of proud history in Hillsborough, New Jersey.
All right. So we're reconvened. Should we do a roll call for everyone to speak up?
Speak up for the chair.
Everyone.
So at this time, Mr. Nusser is back before the board to continue his testimony and answer questions. We have gone through Mr. Maskey's memo dated August 16, 2021, and we'd now like to focus on Mr. DeSessa's memo dated September 8, 2021.
All right, so before we move on, I just want to see anyone from the dais has any questions on what was addressed in Mr. Maskey's memo? No, I just wanted before, while it's fresh in everyone's mind. Okay. Okay, we can move on.
So on Mr. DeSessa's memo, and Mr. DeSessa and I had a conversation earlier today. I don't believe, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Drew, but you reviewed this as if it was a site plan and didn't have the benefit necessarily of fully what we were seeking before you, much like Mr. Mayor on that. So I think some of these comments in here relate to, specifically if you look on page 3, comment 2, it says, note on the cover sheet referencing an exemption from site plan approval shall be removed. Obviously, that would stay. So I'm going to go to page 3 to the subdivision comments. The comments in here, I will note on item 4, the impervious coverage is going from on lot 45.02 with the existing 15.5%, and it's going to, it's decreasing, it's not increasing to 15.41. But other than that, we will comply with those 8 comments within Mr. DeSessa's memo under the subdivision comments, which relate to, I don't know if you want me to go through it in detail or if that's.
No, Mr. DeSessa, are you good with that? I'm just scanning through to see if there was anything that you wanted to state on the record.
They're mostly very detailed review comments, technical. I'd say the applicant, you can address any that you feel you can't address or have a question on, but if you can do it that way. The ones that you want to discuss, if not, the other ones you'll agree to, that's fine.
Sure. So again, on the subdivision comments, we'll comply with that. We'll provide the meets and bounds descriptions and the additional detail that's being requested in here. For the lot 45.01 engineering plan comments, so that's on the lot development plan. Going through some of these administrative things, item 1 and item 2, those would be pertinent if this was a site plan application, and obviously it's not. So those, I would say, are not necessary. Item 3, we discussed parking requirements. Item 4, we discussed the aisle widths and the parking lot sizes. I would say that expanding those parking lot, the parking aisle widths, there, I think that there would be an opportunity maybe to expand some of the one-way widths into the center of the turnaround area. I don't believe that gains any utility by doing that. The vehicles aren't going to pass in that space. And again, it's just additional impervious surface that's being placed on what is otherwise fairly low intensity use. And again, given what the use is and what they're seeking to accomplish here, minimizing the impervious coverage and maximizing the green space is one of the things we're trying to achieve.
So just before we move on from the parking, just because I noticed Mr. DeSace's comments about the proposed size of parking stalls versus Mr. Maskey's. And then I know you had mentioned about 7 feet wide parking spaces for, I guess, the equivalent, I'm going to call it curbside parking. I didn't see that in here. So I'm just want to say, where do we have, I guess, a schedule of these parking spaces? Or is it in the eye chart here on the plans up there that I was trying to determine, because it seems like we have different size parking spaces throughout.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 12 parking spaces that are traditional head-in parking spaces.
Right.
There's the 8 located to the east of the building between Woods Road and the facility.
And those you're proposing to be?
And those would be 9 by 20.
9 by 10, 20, sorry.
The spaces located right by the entrance, which includes 2 handicap stalls, those 4 spaces, again, same situation, 9 by 20 stalls. The 8 by 22 stalls are the 5 overflow parallel parking stalls that are located on the loop, on the south side of the loop here, closest to lot 45.03. So you have 5 spaces in this location, just providing some additional parking. I think if you go back to the discussion we had about parking, 5, maximum of 5 employees, and you go to the requirement of 1 space per 3 beds, that gives us a total demand of 10 parking spaces. Outside of the 2 accessible stalls, we have 10 parking spaces in there. So, we have sufficient parking even without those overflow stalls, but, in the event that there would be a need for it, there's an opportunity for additional parking in that area. And those are the ones that are only 8 feet wide as opposed to 9 or 10. So those are the 8 by 22s. So continuing to page 4, maybe we should have gone through all the memos before we asked questions of the applicant. When it comes to office space within the facility, I mean, there is going to be some administrative space within the facility. It's not going to be manned in the sense that it's an office use within there. I would, similar to any extended care facility and the demands for parking associated with it, you have per bed and then per employee. Any of those facilities is going to have an office space in there just to keep records and maintain that type of information. So there's not an additional parking demand beyond the 5 employees on the site. I think the remaining comments in here, as far as these additional items, we can address them realistically. They're part of the lot development review that the township will do, because again, this really isn't a site plan. So we can provide those details into the plan though. the additional detail on grading and utilities, we can certainly provide that as well. When it comes to stormwater management, the comments are looking for, it seems like just a little bit more detail and trash racks on the outlet structures, some additional information in there. I will note that this project has already received approval from the DRCC, and they reviewed the stormwater as they do in exquisite detail. And so that approval is conditioned solely on the approval by this board. And so once the application has your approval, they will release their unconditional approval for the application. But we can certainly add these additional detailed items in here about certain thicknesses and information.
Can you
But
just give an overview of what your stormwater management is? Is it just strictly a detention basin, or is there anything underground?
So there are two facilities on the site. There's the one between the parking lot and Woods Road on the east side of the property, and then there's the one in the rear of the property to the west. Both are bioretention basins. So they provide water quality treatment as well as your quantity and your recharge. So they're not just a standard.
No subsurface retention, just everything's going to the basin.
Correct. Everything is surface. Yep. So, and I believe if I can summarize on the stormwater management, you didn't take any issue with the overall scheme or its compliance with the rules. It's just looking for some additional information in here, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Moving to page 6 to landscaping. The tree removal calculation, we will update that. The landscaping for the bioretention basin, the bioretention basin has 2 seed mixes located within it. Is it a lack of clarity on the plan on here that is driving that request? It's not, there's not individual plants within there. It's different mixes. We can provide it.
Is that all the vegetation that's shown on the landscaping plan for the bioretention, just the seed mixes, and then you have that perimeter landscaping, but no other vegetation on the banks or anything within the basin?
Correct. Okay. Yeah.
As long as it's in compliance with the BMP and manual, it will be acceptable.
Okay. And we can certainly substitute out the Norway spruce for a tree that is on the township's native tree list. No issue with that. Under miscellaneous, we do have approval from the Somerset Union Soil Conservation District, which we can provide to the board. I think there's been some updates since then, since that was granted. So we need to submit new plans to them and get an updated certification. But again, we provide it to the board, no problems there. We did apply for, and don't want to blame COVID for everything because it's not fair. We applied for an LOI with the DEP. It took longer than I think any other application I've put into the state, but we did finally receive it. So we have an LOI for the property that says that there are no wetlands and there are no transition areas on this property. So the property is clean bill of health when it comes to that. And again, we'll provide that for the board's records. Just moving down the list here, the cost estimates for guarantees and inspection escrows. Because it's not a site plan, I don't want to step on Mr. Bernstein or Dave's toes here on what's required. Certainly we'll provide whatever guarantees or inspection escrows are required as part of the application, however the township handles the single-family residential development. So far as it's required, we will comply. And then again, the DRCC approval, we will provide that to the board as well once we have that, so the board has it in their file as well. And that would be Mr. DeCessa's memo.
Okay,
Yeah, I have no further questions for that.
thank you.
I have a question, and it might go back to David's memo. Was that 30-foot buffer resolved of what is?
I don't believe so. I believe they're requesting a waiver for that.
Yes, we are requesting the waiver. Mr. Maskey says it is his interpretation that it is required to be provided in that location. We are requesting the waiver for it. Again, like as I testified to earlier, I believe while we're not meeting the actual requirement there, we are meeting the spirit of it. We are providing a buffer along that property line from the residential property. This, again, isn't a very intensive use. This is typically, if you read the ordinance, it says when you have a residential use and it's against an arterial road or it's against a collector road, so you're against a high traffic road, to provide a buffer for the residential property, which we don't have that situation, or if it's a non-residential use to a residential use.
As I'm looking at it and thinking of the residential property, when you go around that loop without the buffer, and I know you're putting some screening in, the lights from the cars and the trucks could shine into their property. One of the things that I know you're proposing the evergreens, one of the things that you're asking for the waiver, you could stagger the evergreens, so at least, or do like a double row so that the lights don't penetrate through the trees to the residents.
Yeah, and we can stagger that. We can certainly accommodate that in that space. And maybe in doing that, we can tighten the spacing up a little bit, separate them, bring it together a little bit, and it'll, increase the density of the trees in that location to offset that impact. I think one of the benefits of having the trash enclosure there is it's got a solid fence on it and it will block some of that light. That said, understanding that we're going to look into other locations for that. But, I think, again, the area that you're looking at here is in the far rear of the property where it doesn't impact the residents directly because it's not, they're turning and you're almost on the rear property line. If you look, you look here, you're all the way in the rear of the property here. It looks like there's a garden in the back here.
And this is the one I see they have trees, but if you're coming through here, the lights are.
Yeah, as you come here, there's some distance, but yes, like I said, we can certainly stagger the rows and work to increase the number of plantings in there to offset that impact.
Just for a second, just for clarification for the board, the buffer is required. Testimony you've heard is not, in my opinion, accurate in terms of when it applies. It does apply. He's reading two different sections. There's a reference from one section in the parking ordinance which requires the buffer to another section which requires what goes in the buffer, not where it's required. So just for clarification. You've just said that you'd be willing to look at beefing up the buffer a bit. Would that be to the satisfaction of the board's landscape architect engineer?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to handle it.
You want to go to the environmental?
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. You just want to refer to the Environmental Commission's report from dated September 1st. So I apologize, I was not at the meeting, I was on vacation, so I didn't get the gist of some of this stuff, but could you just give me a synopsis on the discussion on the phase one discussion, considering the the groundwater contamination on the adjacent property. I mean, it doesn't seem like you're building a basement there, so I don't know if you have any like vapor intrusion issues, but were you gonna do a phase one or not phase one, or are you concerned about some of the contamination on the adjacent property?
Well, I think as I understand the contamination on the adjacent property is the property is located northwest of the site. It's located, the property of concern is here. Our development is considerably far away from it. And it's, so as I understand the contamination isn't existing on site. It's obviously their concern to address it. And so, I don't, there's no real concern on my part of an impact from that property at the distance away that it is from our site onto this property.
So I know there was chlorinated solvents down in the contamination. So I don't know where they're, I can't sit here and tell you where they're mitigating to, where they're flowing to. That's just something that, again, I wasn't at that meeting.
Understood.
So
And I
what was
apologize.
discussed.
I was not the one who handled that meeting myself. So we're both at a disadvantage in that respect.
Do you guys have a base? Are you building any basements?
No, there's no basement.
Okay.
So like I said, I think this is on a, it's served by public water. So, concerns from contamination into a well aren't going to exist.
Yeah, that was my next question.
So with public water, that concern doesn't exist. If those chlorinated solvents have made it through the aquifer, we'll be protected from that.
But you, Mr. Singer, was there you want to add anything to that, or?
No, I think that sort of, you addressed the concern. You don't see any concerns on the property.
So you guys decided from the meeting that you weren't going to do a phase one?
They did diligence work on the property, engineering and land planning was also the environmental, they did some environmental due diligence on the property, and they did not find any concern.
Yeah, because I didn't see it in the EIS, but that's why I was asking. So what kind of due diligence did you guys do?
I don't have the answer for you on that. I don't know offhand.
They did a phase one.
We did a phase one and partial.
Yeah, did a phase one
Oh,
and
you
partial
did?
soil. That's part of their all appropriate inquiry under the New Jersey Spill Act statute.
Okay. Was it in the EIS?
No, I don't believe it was in the
I didn't see it. All right, so just make it part of the record here that you did a phase one, you did soil sampling.
Saying you're still under,
Yeah, the lender required us to do a phase one, and I believe we did some phase two, like a partial phase two, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay.
But I think, we definitely did a phase one. That was required by the lender.
Can you submit that to the township?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the environmental commission?
No.
I'd like to just follow up on that. This is the Environmental Commission memo of September 1st. They note that the EIS has the potential vernal habitat. They would like to see details added to the plan.
It's 800 feet from the property. Again, going to the second point of that the LOI was issued without any transition areas, any buffers or wetlands on the property. The DEP would regulate a vernal habitat under the wetlands rules. So with that document, I think it should be sufficient to say that.
And would you provide a copy of the Natural Heritage Endangered and Threatened database?
Yes, and I will say that I sadly didn't have a copy on me, but I had somebody email it to me while I was waiting, listening to Mr. Ford discuss eagles, and I will tell you that there are no threatened or endangered species located on the property as mapped by that database.
Yeah, thanks for picking that up, David. It's getting late.
Are we going to discuss the fire marshal's memo?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Nusser, if you can address the fire marshal's memo dated August 25th, 2021.
Certainly. So the fire marshal has provided a number of comments of code requirements that he is asking us to depict on here as it relates to the marking of fire hydrants. Once a fire truck, I think the fire truck that we have here is a 40-foot fire truck, and he's looking for a 47-foot fire truck. So we will have to update for that. But again, as far as the requirements are in here and as they relate and are required by the application, we'll comply and work with the fire marshal to his satisfaction.
And as far as the fire zones that he's asking to be marked, is that going to put any of the parallel parking spots in jeopardy?
It shouldn't.
I mean, I know they're away from the building, but
Yeah, I mean,
without having, a copy of the code in front, I don't know what the requirements are.
I think that typically that you would stripe out a fire lane, which would come probably around the curbs, and a lane on that opposite side of the parallel parking would be striped as a fire lane so that no one would park along that curb and create a blockage where they couldn't get through, trucks couldn't get through. So I would look at putting a fire lane to provide that, if the fire marshal's okay with that.
Yeah, like I said, we'll work with him on compliance for it. The loop itself doesn't support the fire truck going around that space. So really the fire lane would be driving in through that space, and then they would turn around towards the front of the site, on site, but towards the front of the site. So they would be driving in, the fire lane would be that 20-foot wide section, and then they would do a turning movement to within the site to be able to pull out so they're not backing out. But like I said, we will happily discuss it with the fire chief fire marshal to his satisfaction.
Mr. Nelson, can you summarize the need for the variances and waivers, and showing that they do not cause a substantial detriment and the requirements of the variances?
Certainly. So summarizing the variances for you, as we started with that, we have two variances for proposed lot 45.02, which is the existing single-family home. The first being that the maximum impervious coverage is exceeded at 15.41%, where 10% is permitted, and the existing is 15.5%. The second being for the accessory building, in this case the garage, being prohibited to be in the front yard, and it is located very much in the front yard. In my opinion, these are both can be considered under the hardship standards as it relates to the lot where things were constructed, especially as it relates to the impervious coverage, the house being built further to the rear, the garage is in the location that it's in, short of removing it and removing that feature from the property. There's no means to comply with that standard. I don't see any substantial detriment as a result of the grant of those variances. They've both existed, these conditions, for a number of years. As you heard earlier in testimony, this was built in the 70s. So for more than 40 years that those structures have been there and operated without issue. I would, further say, as it comes to the waivers, the waivers that we're seeking, again, we'll just outline them here. It's for the widths of the aisles, 24 feet for the two-way aisles where 30 is required, and where 25 is required for the one-way aisles, we're proposing 12 and 20 feet. And actually, there is a section where it is 24 feet, just to make it even better. Right at the top of the loop, it's 24 feet behind those stalls. The parking stall dimensions, again, at 9 by 20 feet and 8 by 22 for the parallel stalls, where the ordinance requires 10 by 20 and RSIS requires 9 by 18. Additionally, the 30-foot wide buffer from the property line, where we are proposing, as Mr. Maskey's letter notes, about 18 feet from the property line. So we don't meet that requirement either. And then finally, as it relates to the tree mitigation, because we are removing trees outside of the critical footprint. I don't want to be terribly repetitive of myself, so I'm not going to go through all my justifications on that. Again, so I'll just say that as it relates to the layout of the parking and drive aisles, that these are common dimensions for these features. Given the intensity of the use, it is appropriate. As it relates to the buffer, I believe the discussion with the board has been beneficial in that we will make adjustments to the buffering that is proposed between the parallel parking spaces and that southern property line to the satisfaction of the board's engineer and landscape architect, that we beef up that screening to provide an appropriate buffer to the residential property to the south. As it relates to the tree mitigation, again, the site complies with the fact that we're not removing more than 20% of trees from the site, and we're providing mitigation in compliance with the ordinance on site. I think in summation, if you look at what this facility is, again, the use isn't here in question before you. This is not a site plan, so it's a little bit different. I understand that. But I think you've heard some pretty compelling testimony from both the applicants as well as the current property owner as the need for this facility. I think one of the things that you should think about as you deliberate over this is why the state enacted the law that they did, that, yes, in some respects took power away from you to be able to control a facility like this. It's because of all uses. Instead of deeming it inherently beneficial as they have done with solar and other uses in the past, they took it a step further and said that this use supports the public benefit and the welfare of the community to an extent that we're going to remove barriers to a facility operator to be able to construct a facility like this because there's a need and a demand for it within the state and in the different communities. So of all uses that would further purpose A, the general welfare, this use does that. And it does it in a way that we believe is respectful to the community. Again, we're doing this in a way that is low intensity, limiting our impervious where we can, doing it in a way that, as you heard the operations of it, how the residents get engaged and, in the outdoors and aren't just trapped on the inside. And so I think on the whole, if you look at this, there is no substantial detriment from this application, and it's quite the opposite.
Any questions for this witness?
I just, one with regards to walkways from the parking lots. It looks like I see one from the, I'm going to call it the group of 8 that are to the north, the ones that are just pulled straight in.
Yes.
But the ones that are parallel, I don't seem to see anything that would seem to indicate that there may be walkway from there that would require those, they're parking there to kind of walk across that circle to get to the front of the building.
Yeah, the anticipation, again, because it is overflow and we're trying to limit the impervious, we could add a walkway to it. It's going to, couple things. We're going to reduce that buffer space that we have to that southern property line. We don't anticipate them being used, but we want to be able to provide for additional parking if it would be necessary. And so again, because this is low intensity as far as the trips and everything coming in and out of the site, there's very good visibility there. You can't come around that loop, at any rate of speed, really. You're going to have to, it's designed to have you going slow. So, having somebody walk along the driveway up to the sidewalk, I think is, I think it's an acceptable manner to have people access it on balance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking that there may be visitors who may be carrying something with them, and
right. And again, if we're having visitors and they're, if they are, if they're bringing something, if they're carrying something, they can, that one-way aisle is wide enough where they can stop and they can bring it to the door and then go park to save themselves the trip. Again, you have 5 parking stalls that are going to be for staff, and you have a further 5 stalls beyond these overflow ones for visitors. So I think there's sufficient parking for a visitor to be able to park. And again, it's just these additional spaces are just there in case there's a need, which again isn't truly anticipated.
yeah, I'm just looking from a safety perspective. Just people
Understood.
don't walk in the pathway of traffic regardless.
Understood.
Questions?
In that median, I'll call it, in the circle drive, is that going to be grass or is that pavers or what is that?
It's going to be landscape. So there's 6 deciduous trees in there.
In there, right. So it's going to be all grass with trees in it then.
Correct.
Okay.
I heard you say something about the buffer to the south, but I think it needs to be also looked at to the north because there's a residential property and the turnover of the staff is at 11 p.m. like I heard. There's a potential for headlights. It's courtesy to the residential that buffer to the south and the north, especially because of the direct line of what the lights could be. So hopefully that could be added into the field review.
Yeah, we can do the same.
If there's no additional questions from Dais, I just want to open it up to the public since they have not had a chance to question the engineer's testimony. So if there's anyone in the public that would like to question the engineer on his testimony, please come forward and state your name and address again for the record.
Hi, I'm Edward Brisky at 81 Green Avenue, Belmead. I just wanted to mention that house with the buffer area, that's my aunt's house, Aunt Janine. So I'll make sure that they put enough trees and buffer it so she doesn't get the lights at night. Thank you.
Joe Kotowski, 12 Peachick Farm Road, Hillsborough. I just want to, if you could explain better the impervious, because that area where it looks like it's going to be all commercial parking and roadway, even though it's a single structure, is all farmland. So how is not the impervious area increasing greatly at this point?
So it's clear. What I was saying was we are adding impervious. And that's why we have the stormwater management plan to manage the increase in impervious. Because yes, it is currently vacant and we're adding impervious surfaces between the building itself, the drive aisles, the parking spaces, the sidewalks, all the features that are going to be constructed on the site. So it is being increased. What my comments and testimony were that the municipal ordinance, the requirements for it would have us put in more impervious surface than what we're proposing. It would have wider drive aisles. It would have larger parking spaces that we don't believe are necessary for this use given its intensity. So it's not that we're not adding impervious. We certainly are. It's just that the relief that we're asking for as far as the waivers is so that we can limit how much impervious we are putting in.
So you're saying the existing is 15.5%, correct?
That is lot 45.02. So that is the existing dwelling.
That's the dwelling on the other side of the S turn on Wood.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so that dwelling is staying?
That dwelling is staying.
Okay, so then all this area where the stretch of farmland is where you're gonna put all your development is adding how much to that 15%? I don't see anywhere in here where the total impervious is for the whole site.
So
Even though they're two separate lots.
Well,
For the project, what's the total impervious?
So the compliance is per lot because the standard is per lot.
Right.
So the lot that has the house on it requires relief from the 10% standard because that is going to be in its proposed state at 15.41%.
So that's existing as is, that's the 15.41%.
The proposed lot has a coverage of 9.52%. So it complies with the
one you're
10%.
gonna develop is 9.5?
Right.
I mean, not an engineer, but just looking at it with the roadways, the building and everything, would be way more than that single family home.
You got to add all the lot of that whole existing property, not just that, not just the part that you see that's, I think we have to add all the lot is that.
So this
So-
area here has no impervious right now.
Correct.
And you're gonna put 9% in here.
No, it's 9. So the 9% is on this lot, which is this entire property.
The 9% is this section.
No.
There's
But
the way it's
it's in this whole footprint.
so the way it's calculated is the total surface area of impervious that is going to be placed divided by the overall lot area. So it's not done section by section.
Right.
That 9 point,
So that's the whole 16 acres. It's 9% of the whole.
it's 12.3.
Okay.
So out of that 12 and change acres, it's less than the 10%. Yes, it is concentrated in this location, but it does comply with the ordinance.
But Chris, you might want to clarify. I mean, overall, the development's increasing the impervious by an acre of new impervious.
Correct.
Okay. So that acre of new impervious is what's being treated by their stormwater management facilities. There are two basins that will collect that extra runoff from that extra acre of impervious, hold it in there and release it at a slower rate, and that's how it's designed.
So there is an additional acre of impervious being
Correct.
added to the site.
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct. You deal with percentages, and because it's a large lot area, the percentages are less.
Right.
But the actual area is being increased, and that's why they have a stormwater management system.
Okay. All right. That's my only question for it.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you.
We have no further witnesses. At this time, we would request approval of this application.
Okay, before I ask Eric to outline,
If anybody wants a last crack at the
Yes.
application.
one last question, thoughts, clarifications? So I'll need to close public.
Gonna give the public one
Oh,
last-
that's right. Yep. So that's before you outline. Okay. All right, so now we're going to move for anyone in the public just to want to make any last general comments. They don't have to be questions directed at any witness, but any general comments on the overall application. Okay,
Now's your chance.
there you go. And name and address again.
Joseph Gutowski, 12 Petrick Farm Road, Hillsborough. I think we have a lot of moving parts here. I understand New Jersey law where it's considered a single-family home, so it kind of doesn't address a lot of things. But as a board, you still have to address the subdivision, correct? I think you have a lot of moving parts there to make it work by moving, setbacks and property lines. The deviation of impervious surface, a whole acre, I think after this past week with the storm, we had 2 people pass away on the corner of Amwell and Willow in a swiftwater rescue. I think you had 30-some swiftwater rescues in this area of Hillsborough alone. I am involved in emergency management, so is a consideration to me. I think this is a great concept, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's the right place. I think you just have too many things going on. One of the other ones, big one for me would be which kind of was just skated over, is the commercial vehicles in the residential district. Is the answer that it's a commercial vehicle on this site, or is it commercial vehicles traveling to this site? Was there a traffic impact study done? Normally, when you have a commercial sized lot, I've been before zoning boards before, with a number of parking spaces, you have a couple things. Number of parking spaces for the square footage of the building. I understand this building's over 10,000 square foot. So do we need a traffic study? Because basically what's going to happen, in my opinion, is that if we're really talking about a waiver for commercial vehicles in residential districts, the way I read it in the letter, it's a big one. It's across from Country Classics. The entrance is at Petrick Farm Road. Woods Road's probably one of the most dangerous turns there is in Hillsborough. It's a tight S-turn. It's basically blind going through it. And, when you get and look at Petrick Farm being straight across, when you have your commercial drivers realize, I'm not going to take Woods Road, Petrick Farm's just much easier. Down the road, are they going to do that? If they were to do that, I would say we would need some kind of regulation on the roadways and Country Classics to maybe limit the truck size to, 10,000 pounds, GVW, basically a one-ton truck. You have a lot of kids in the neighborhood, they're running around and stuff, and that would be a concern of mine also.
If I just jump in for a second.
Yeah.
What you're addressing is exactly what the ordinance says. They are limited to a 10,000 GVW truck. be parked overnight. That's all they're allowed.
on
to
the
have.
site, but my question is, does the ordinance address the vehicle going to the site and what roads they can use? Because in a traffic impact study, you would typically have your police traffic consultant would
No,
do a-
this
would
would
also
apply-
give
this
some sort of
applies to
response.
Basically, any residential property being allowed to have one commercial truck at 10,000 or less on
On
property
site.
overnight.
Okay, so it
In other
does,
words, for an example, your typical contractor.
Right.
You can have the truck in the
Right.
driveway. That's what
Exactly.
that's about.
right, okay. So we're not addressing traffic at
Can't
all.
control deliveries.
Huh?
Can't control deliveries.
No, you can't control deliveries, but.
That would be the only other commercial traffic.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I think they should have to stick to the buffers. It appears to me that the property doesn't work if you do stick to the buffers. You know, we're cutting road sizes in half. We're going from, 24 to 12 and 30 to 26. So we're decreasing all the sizes. And I get it, it's helpful on the impervious. But even with an acre of impervious added to the site, you have flooding on Amwell, you have flooding on Willow, you have flooding on Hillsborough. In emergencies, it may be difficult to get a patient out to a hospital. Just some of my concerns, and I appreciate the board listening to me tonight, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my name's Edward Brisky, again, at 81 Green Avenue. I'd like to address the concerns the gentleman just made. This is the lowest impact development for this almost 13 acres that you would get.
You got talking to the microphone, Mr. Brisky.
Excuse me? Okay. Most of the property is untouched. It's just the area in front of Petrick Farm Road. And that area is a development, Van Cleef development, about 15 years ago, put in a big development there. So the impact is very low for any other use that this property can be used for. Otherwise, the developer would come in and try to pack in as many homes as possible on this property. And this property, for the most part, is left unharmed except for the area that was farmed just in front of Petrick Farm Road. And I think the applicant here is doing everything they can to make it low impact and not be obtrusive to the neighbors. And this is such a needed use in this day and age of our baby boomers are living longer and our parents are living longer. And we need a facility locally to be able to help for those that are working full-time and taking care of our parents, such as my wife and I. It's a very big burden. And the reason why we haven't put mom in a facility is because they usually can't get outside. They're on an upper floor, the elevators are locked, and there's no one that has time to take them out. This facility is low, it's not high, it doesn't tower over the other homes. The patients can walk out without having to go up and down stairs, which is a burden. They're outside, they can pet the animals, they can take a look at the garden. They have something to do instead of just sitting in a wheelchair and staring at a TV. So I would just ask the board to, we don't know who can get Alzheimer's or dementia as they get older. It could be any of us. And if there's no one there able to take care of us, to have a facility like this, I think is the most humane facility that can be built to take care of our aging population. I mean, someday it may be me or any one of us. So that's the point I'd like to make before the board, because my wife and I are faced with taking care of my mom, and it's a full-time job, and we still both work. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
for the opportunity to address the board. My name is Henry Shu again, 6 Landing Way, Hillsborough, New Jersey. I prepared my remarks because I've not been before the board before, so I'm hoping not to waste too much of your time. I also incidentally wanted to thank the board for making documents so easily accessible for today's meeting. It's incredibly helpful, and I was very proud of Hillsborough Township. I've lived now in Hillsborough for 13 years, where I've been privileged to raise my family at 6 Landing Way, which is more formally lot 44.16, which is the lot directly to the west of the proposed development and directly adjacent to that lot. Now, in the FEMA map that the applicant submitted on page 16 of today's notes, the satellite map is conveniently more than 13 years old, so my house and also 6 other houses don't appear on that satellite image, which minimizes the impact of this application. But there are indeed 6 homes there, and mine is directly adjacent. First, I want to say that I fully support my neighbor, Mr. the Briskey's family's application to change their lot lines to what makes sense and is more practical, and so just to make it more commercially saleable. So by all means, I support that, provided it meets all the requisite ordinances. But with regards to all the other waiver and variance requests proposed, I strongly oppose all of them. And while I have specific objections to each one of them, I would just say that in general, this application seems to be like a perfect example of why a planning board even exists, which is to prevent developers from using property that's zoned one way and intended for a particular use for something else. Now, much has been made about whether this is a single-family residential use by law or by ordinance, and I'm certainly not qualified to make that distinction. I assume the attorney's presence is making the appropriate testimony, but whether it technically fits under the definition of a single-family use, it seems like simple logic just dictates that it is not. I mean, it requires over 15 parking spaces, 3 outdoor floodlights at 10 feet, as they testified, 2 of which, by the way, face my bedroom window, 3 outdoor floodlights at 15 feet heights, and will house 15 residents. Look, just by definition, this is not a single-family use. So if the applicant is going to argue that the letter of the law is single-family use, then they should be held to the letter of the law, which is to address all the appropriate ordinances and not be granted the variances that they request. With specific regards to the applications made, first, the parking waiver with regards to the 30-foot buffer, I mean, that exists for a reason, and I presume it's that if you're going to build a lot with more than 10 spaces in a residential zone, it shouldn't be within eyesight of the next lot or the home, because they don't belong in a residential area. Now, I understand, as Mr. Briskey stated previously, that their family owns that lot, but the future owner of that lot does not have the opportunity at this point to object to that, the proximity of the parking lot that's proposed. It's unclear to me whether the applicant is still seeking a waiver request with regards to lighting, but the engineer, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, testified earlier that there's no spillage into adjacent lots, which I find incredibly naive, as, light pollution has no bounds. And again, there are many single-family homes in close proximity. And with regards to the traffic discussion that we've been having recently here, by definition, this development is going to increase traffic to the neighborhood, and notwithstanding the applicant's testimony that the traffic would be minimal, Mr. DeCesa's memo dated yesterday estimates 46 trips per day on weekdays, and that was on page 260 of today's meeting packet. I want to talk about that in particular because my children and all the children in the neighborhood west of Woods Road, they frequently cross over Woods Road in order to get to, there's a public playground in Pembroke Terrace. It's 12 Pembroke Terrace is its technical address. So we frequently cross over Woods Road. So any additional traffic is, by definition, increases risk to the neighborhood and the many children that live there. So I would just conclude my remarks. Sorry they're so long. Sorry I'm the cranky neighbor. But my neighbors all along the Woods Road corridor I mean, we purchased houses, we paid a premium, we frankly pay premiums in our property taxes because we wanted to live in a residential neighborhood, in a quiet residential neighborhood. And in my particular case, I paid a premium to live on the end of a cul-de-sac, precisely so that is quiet. So while Mr. Singh and the other applicants, professionals who have testified, they propose that their facility would benefit seniors with dementia, and therefore, it's altruistic and necessary, and I applaud that. But as a neighbor of Petrick Farm Road suggests, like it seems like a good idea in the wrong place, and let's also not kid ourselves. When I asked Mr. Singh whether it's a for-profit organization, he dodged the question, requiring me to Google what a B corporation is. But indeed, a B corporation is also a for-profit organization nonetheless. And so for them to benefit at the detriment of all the neighbors in the Woods Road area who want to live in a quiet neighborhood, pay a premium to be a quiet neighborhood, for them to benefit for that, it's just frankly unfair and essentially tantamount to theft. So I would urge you respectfully to please deny these variances and waivers. If they want to be a single-family residence shall use, they should comply with the necessary requirements to do so. And I would encourage Mr. Singh and Dr. Burrill to locate their facility in a more appropriate location that they already testified they have already found and is still available. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Again, sorry for being the cranky neighbor.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else from the public? Okay. Seeing none, so I'm going to entertain a motion to close the public.
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Eric?
3 minutes unless you want to extend.
Hmm?
You got 3 minutes unless you want to extend.
Extend.
Somebody make a motion to extend time of the board meeting.
I'll make a motion to extend the time board meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any nays? Nope. Okay.
The major condition that I'm aware of, and I'll just bring Mr. Recessa and Mr. Maskey can chime in as well, is the applicant agrees that there will be no future development on this site without further planning board review / approval. I would want to point out to the board that the township ordinance determines this to be considered a single-family residence is in accordance with state law established by the legislature of the state of New Jersey and as accepted and regulated by various agencies in the state, most notably the Department of Health and Department of Community Affairs. So if the neighbors have a problem with how these things defined, the individuals to talk to are nobody up in this room at this time, but the current members of the 16th legislative district and other parties according to this discussion. Mr. Maskey and I have had for maybe 2 years now. We did this application originally, came up back as far back as 2019, the regulation. So I don't disagree. This is not exactly what I would call a perfect situation, but the state defines it as single family. Now, the ordinance defines it as single family. The applicant will have to comply with those waivers and buffers to the extent that they can even ask for you or grant them, so they've asked for a waiver. The buffer is subject to working with the board engineer and the board landscape architect relative to the buffering on both sides of the aisle. And the fact is, folks, I don't have to remind you, but I will for the record, you deal with buffers and you deal with the neighbors who are there. If somebody buys even lots down the road and don't like it, there are other options available, but you're dealing with the people who are there now. It's up to the board whether they want to grant the waiver on there's a request which is standard in this town for parking install size. There is a waiver request. The waiver, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Maskey, for lighting is no longer necessary because they meet the requirements, or they will have to meet the requirements.
That's what they testified to, yeah.
They will meet, they've indicated as condition, they will meet the provisions of section 188-51.1 of the Township Code as to commercial vehicles in residential districts. It's up to the board whether you want to grant them the waiver regarding the aisle widths at 30 feet versus 24 for two-way, and 24 versus 25 for one-way. They put testimony on relative to the variance for the impervious coverage. And the impervious coverage issue we're talking about is lot 45.02, the existing lot. And it's actually a slight reduction in a situation that already existed currently on that lot. And the other variance they're seeking is to permit the deviation from our accessory structure requirements. And they brought the front row storage in the front yard, and they were talking about lot 45.02, which is the existing structure which will be subdivided off of the major lot. They have met the requirement on tree mitigation, and obviously they are going to have to comply with any and all requirements of the planner, the engineer to the extent it applies to this kind of application, the environmental commission is specified to, and the fire marshal. Will obviously stand to be amended by either Mr. DeCessa or Mr. Maskey.
The only other items that were, I believe, agreed to were that they would look into relocating the trash collection area, and that they would make appropriate landscaping around the hot box.
I think those are all the waivers that I understand it to be. Regarding the aisle widths, the one-way being 25 feet required, 20 being proposed, and 24 is one of them, but 20 feet is the minimum they are proposing. Sorry.
12, 20 is the one section, the southern section of the parallel stalls is 12.
12 because then you have 8 for the parallel.
Right.
Okay, so it's 12.
12 is the minimum.
Right. And then you have 24 feet in another section behind the parking.
Right.
Correct. Okay. And 24 feet being proposed where 30 feet is required for two-way. Right. Typically, those larger dimensions are for more active sites, shopping centers, or high-volume traffic. Here, we don't have that necessarily with this use, so I don't see a big detriment of reducing those widths in order to keep the impervious down as well.
Okay. Maybe I just might add about the Chief Winiger's memo that may require some alterations. So that may change some of the lanes dimensions, so I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
And obviously site conditions.
Right.
How about the lights? Could the lights be lower along the drive instead of up high? I know that in places they do have drives that with lights, it lights up everything low so it doesn't shine in any neighbor's house.
So the lights themselves, this is Dawn, okay. The lights themselves, I mean, the 15 feet is, I mean, a fairly typical height. The fixtures themselves are full cutoff LEDs. So they're very well controlled over, your older style lights that have, metal halides or high pressure sodium lights. So, your ordinance is very clear about percentage of light, so you don't have sky glow, so they're dark sky compliant. And these fixtures do that, where they're full cutoff, and again, that light's very controlled going down. Doing multiple lights along the driveway, you're going to end up with a significant increase in the number of fixtures in order to accomplish that. And then with parking stalls and the vehicles there, now you have to accommodate for the fact that there might be a vehicle there blocking that light. So that's why, 15 is a good height to have for them, so that you're not having a vehicle blocking that light from hitting the ground.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Sure.
sorry to throw something in at this last minute. Is there, and I would defer to Drew on this to some extent, after a certain hour, can you reduce the lighting on the site?
Yeah, you can put them on timers and do that. I don't think there's a requirement for 24-hour lighting.
Yeah, it sounds like from the testimony that there's really no activity at night
I
on the
mean,
site anyway,
You
correct?
may want a security light on near the building entrance, so that's that, but you can dim or reduce the number of lights after a certain hour that come on.
Yeah, so we had said the testimony, the applicant was, it was 11 to 7 was that overnight shift when you have 2 people. So you're going to have a shift change around 11. But yeah, there's ways of reducing the illumination there or turning off certain fixtures and just keeping the ones adjacent to the building. And I guess without getting into great detail, the easiest way to do it is to say to your satisfaction or to both of your satisfactions, we can look at that and make adjustments to the lighting when it comes to timing and what fixtures.
That'd be an additional condition. Thank you.
Okay. Any last additional comments? Clarifications? Okay. So I will now entertain, a motion for approval based on the conditions that have been outlined by Mr. Bernstein, Mr. Maskey, Mr. Sessa, and my 2 cents I threw in there at the last minute.
Because you can.
Yes.
I'll just make a comment and then I'll make a motion. But with respect to the neighbors who had concerns, so you always have to be cognizant of what's available to be built and what is able to be built without coming to see us. So the 2-acre zoning on this particular property would allow up to probably 6 houses being built on this property without having to come see us. So you have 6 houses with 2 cars, impacts on schools, impacts on traffic, impacts on impervious, which would probably be more than 1 acre as opposed to having a cluster development. Plus another also sort of things of having a small development right across the street from Petrick Farm Road. Would we like to have more control over a site plan? I'm sure to a man on this board, absolutely. That's why I asked the question, but unfortunately the ordinance and the law of the state of New Jersey precludes us not to having that other than just allowing a plot plan. But the application, in my opinion, is asked to do most of everything that can be done on a site with some minimal waivers required. We're talking about 4 or 5 feet on side setback. We're not asking for lighting variance. Parking is relatively minimal. We have a trash enclosure that will have moved properly. But you'll have 10 acres or 11 acres of open space that will never be developed on without having to come back to us. That will absorb water that is being rained on as opposed to being rushed off into other areas of retention or detention basins. You are maintaining 80-90% of the property without a development. There's a saying that says that the positives must outweigh the detriments when you look at planning applications. And the use here, both altruistically, as you've mentioned, and from a impact statement, though we did not have a formal impact statement on our schools and on our infrastructure, I think warrants us to take a good look at this application as we did and asking our professionals to look at it. Drew, our engineer, says that from his standpoint, the water mitigation is done to his satisfaction, which I would believe. So taking all that consideration, I think it is prudent that I will make a motion to approve this application, full knowing that it is not perfect, though most applications that come to us are never perfect. That's why they're in front of us. But what we do is our charge as a board is to make it the best that we can make it and to make sure that it is at least an improvement to our township, to the needs of our township, and to the value of our residents the best we can do it. So for that, I will make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mayor.
With that said, I agree with you and I'll second it.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second on the table. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Beeson?
Yes.
Mr. Santa Romita?
Yes.
Mr. Scobo?
Yes.
Mr. Hestag?
Yes.
Mr. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Mayor LaPlante?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sarachi?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see what we got. Oops. Okay. All right. Let's see. Just for everyone to be aware, we do have our next meeting. It was a business meeting on September 23rd, but because of the storm last week, we had to reschedule the hearing on Campus Associates. It's going to turn into.
We believe that we will have a meeting on September 23rd regarding the Campus Associates application. It is my understanding that we will have a bare minimum quorum for that.
Right.
If there are any members of the board who advise the board that they will be attending, if for some reason that should change sooner than later, please advise us so we can advise the applicant. We believe they are noticing today. If not, they will be noticing shortly. With the understanding as to all the items that we're going to have to deal with for that night's meeting. So.
Nobody can get this flu.
At some point, you're gonna have to hear it, folks.
That's right.
That's right.
So we have that. And right now, it doesn't appear to be anything on October 7th. I don't see anything scheduled.
We at the moment, Mr. Chairman, we would ask you to leave the meeting on the 7th. We'll know better on the 23rd what we're going to need for the 7th. But I thought we also had some applications.
Okay, sounds good. So with that, I will entertain a motion of adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. See everyone in 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Hillsborough, New Jersey, celebrating 250 years of a rich history. Hi, I'm Mayor Sean LaPlante, and I'm proud to showcase Hillsborough, one of the best places to live in America. From the preserved farms that help feed the world, to the Vanderveer House, to the John R. Stott's house, restored and currently utilized for business, to the magnificent and world-famous Duke Farms, where you can walk or ride a bike through their historic grounds, to the iconic Neshannock Reformed Church, and just down the road is our fabulous Neshannock Mill, located right on the picturesque Raritan River. You're invited to visit Hillsborough, a great place to live, work, play, and do business anytime. And experience over 250 years of proud history in Hillsborough, New Jersey.